Chapter 476. Qin Haoshuan looked up to the sky and laughed. He panted and said in a determined tone, "Even if I die, I will drag you down with me." Qin Haoshuan stopped halfway through his words. He stared at the wound on Qin Chuan's abdomen and said angrily, "How can this be? I clearly locked onto his head." Qin Haoshuan seemed to have thought of something. He suddenly turned his head and looked at Lu Zi, who was standing not far away. He looked at the strange and evil purple star divine eyes above Lu Zi's head and was unable to restrain his anger. Just as he was about to roar, his head was chopped off by Su Kuang's sword. Su Kuang looked at Qin Haoshuan, who died with his eyes wide open. He said in a low voice, "I really regret that I had to defeat you in such a way." Qin Haoshuan had always been the strongest opponent in Su Kuang's heart. He had always wanted to defeat Qin Haoshuan fair and square and become the strongest person in the younger generation. Even after Qin Chuan appeared, Qin Haoshuan was still one of the opponents that Su Kuang wanted to defeat the most. However, since the end of the 6 Great Academies ranking competition, Su Kuang could not understand everything that Qin Haoshuan had done. He became more and more disappointed in him. Until today, when he saw Qin Haoshuan become Zerg's lackey, he really felt sorry for Qin Haoshuan. There were some paths that could not be turned back once one took the wrong path. While Su Kuang was lamenting over Qin Haoshuan's death, the others gathered around Qin Chuan. At this time, Qin Chuan had already returned to his human form. He covered the wound on his abdomen with his hand and looked at Lu Zi, who was crying. He grinned and said, "Why are you crying? You saved me." Originally, Qin Haoshuan's energy cannon was aimed at Qin Chuan's head. He wanted to blow up Qin Chuan's head. However, Lu Zi's purple star divine eyes had interfered with Qin Haoshuan. Therefore, the energy cannon that should have been aimed at Qin Chuan's head ended up landing on Qin Chuan's abdomen. This allowed Qin Chuan to escape death. In the face of Qin Chuan's comforting words, Lu Zi shook her head and cried, "If my control over the purple star god eyes was just a little higher, he wouldn't have been able to hurt you. You've already performed very well." Qin Chuan didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "You've already performed much better than I expected." At this time, Yarao also walked over. Her gaze seemed to be somewhat disgusted as she looked at the bloody hole on Qin Chuan's abdomen. Then she casually threw a scarlet-colored pill to Qin Chuan and said, "Eat it." Seeing that familiar pill, Qin Chuan didn't say anything and immediately swallowed it into his stomach. Along with the effect of the pill, the wound on Qin Chuan's abdomen healed at a speed visible to naked eyes. Seeing this scene, Lu Zi was dumbfounded. She looked at the wound on Qin Chuan's abdomen with disbelief and exclaimed, "How can this be?" Not only Lu Zi was stunned by this astonishing effect of the pill, other people were also stunned. Only Fei Peng and others of Demon Clan were looking at Qin Chuan and Yarao with particularly strange expression. But because everyone's attention wasn't on them, so no one noticed. "Well, now that your injury is healed, get up, lest you provoke some people to cry endlessly for you." Yarao shot a glance at Lu Zi, then said to Qin Chuan, "Qin Haoshuan appeared here in order to prevent us from interfering with Zerg's plan. Let's hurry over and see the situation." Qin Chuan nodded his head. Then he looked at Qin Haoshuan, who had already lost his vitality. His eyes flashed with a touch of complex color, then he said in a low voice, "No matter what, he was once a member of Human Clan, and can also be regarded as a Heaven's Pride expert. I'll trouble you to help me cremate his corpse, and let him rest in carefree secret territory forever." As Yarao heard what was said, she casually waved her hand, and a flame fell on Qin Haoshuan's corpse, burning it into ashes. Then from the raging fire, a pitch-black ghost-like figure suddenly floated out, and issued an extremely mournful cry. "Qin Chuan, I'll be waiting for you in hell." Truly unrepentant. Yarao coldly snorted, then waved the fan in her hand, and instantly erased Qin Haoshuan's soul from this world. Qin Chuan originally wanted to leave Qin Haoshuan's soul behind, but Yaorao's attack was too fast, and he was already too late to stop it. So at this moment, facing the scattered soul, he could only sigh, expressing pity. "Don't sigh, let's go." Yaorao turned her head to look at that distant purple light pillar, then said to Qin Chuan, "Wait until Zerg's army arrives, then we will be done for." Having heard what was said, everyone looked at that distant purple light pillar in the sky. In this period of time, compared to when it had first appeared, that purple light pillar had already become a lot thicker, and its energy fluctuation had also become more astonishing. This also indicated that those two Zerg soldiers were getting closer and closer to success. "Let's go, we rumble." Just when Qin Chuan was speaking, the clear sky suddenly darkened, and at the same time, thunder rumbled and gale rose from all directions. Looking at that lightning power lingering above that purple light pillar, Qin Chuan's complexion suddenly changed, and said in deep voice, "Bad, they seem to be about to succeed." Before Qin Chuan's voice fell, suddenly a huge whirlpool appeared in the sky, and purple light filled the air. This whirlpool was almost exactly the same as that transmission channel that Qin Chuan and others had seen before in Treasureland. "Quickly go." At this moment, Qin Chuan already didn't have time to say anything else, and as if he was flying, he dashed towards the direction of that purple light pillar. Whoosh! Yaorao riding her feather appeared in the sky above Qin Chuan, then stretched out her hand towards Qin Chuan, and said loudly, "Come up!" Upon seeing this, Qin Chuan immediately jumped up, then grabbed Yaorao's hand. Yaorao took advantage of this opportunity to pull him onto the feather, then with a thought, the feather as if flying shuttle flew straight towards the location of purple light pillar. Below the transmission altar, Sienna and Band looked at the huge whirlpool that had appeared in the sky, and their face exposed ecstasy. "Ha ha ha, we have succeeded, the wormhole is being established, and in a little while, we will be able to connect to the brood mother nest, and at that time, we will be able to welcome our reinforcements." Band burst into loud laughter, and appeared to be extremely excited. Sienna was also extremely excited, but when she sensed the appearance of two powerful auras not far away, the smile on her face froze. "Damn it! It is Qin Chuan and that woman of Monster Clan. How could they appear here? Didn't Qin Haoshuan say that he was going to stop them?" Sienna was extremely angry. Just when the wormhole was about to be established, the troublemakers had arrived. "Humph, only the two of them, perhaps others have stopped Qin Haoshuan." Band coldly snorted, "We will stop them." Although Band and Sienna knew that Qin Chuan and Yaorao were very strong, and they weren't their opponents, but with their strength, if they only wanted to obstruct Qin Chuan and Yaorao, and stall for time for the establishment of wormhole, then it wouldn't be a big problem. As long as the wormhole was successfully established, all their troubles would be easily solved. Chapter 477. From far away, Qin Chuan and Yaorao could already see the figures of Senna and Band. At the same time, they also noticed that altar made of bones. That purple light beam was emitted from that altar. That altar should be the key to form the transmission channel. Qin Chuan immediately made a decision. "I will hold them back, you go and destroy that altar." Hearing this, Yaorao nodded her head and said, "You be careful." Qin Chuan complied. Then he suddenly jumped into the sky and used dragon transformation technique, transforming into an azure thunder dragon. After that, he roared and rushed towards Senna and Band who were standing in front of the altar. And on the other side, Yaorao's momentum didn't decrease at all, she directly rushed towards the altar from the sky. Seeing the action of Qin Chuan and Yaorao, Senna and Band had already guessed the intention of these two people. Both of them looked at each other, then Senna stretched out his wings and rushed towards Yaorao who was in the sky. As for Band, he roared. His body suddenly expanded and changed into a pitch-black beetle, and met Qin Chuan who was descending from the sky. "Oh!" Qin Chuan opened his mouth and spat out a mass of dragon breath towards Band. Band didn't resist. He opened his sharp mouth and spat out a mass of dark green viscous liquid which collided with the dragon breath, causing a violent explosion. At the same time, 4 wings stretched out from the back of Band, and as if a black whirlwind, his huge body directly collided with Qinchuan. His sharp insect legs transformed into the sharpest sword and ruthlessly stabbed towards Qinchuan's dragon body. Clang! Insect legs and dragon scales collided, and a burst of metallic sound burst out. Qinchuan roared, raised his dragon claws, and brazenly grabbed towards Band's head. But Band didn't dodge. He opened his ferocious teeth and ferociously bit towards Qinchuan's dragon claws. Just as Band's mouth was about to bite Qinchuan's dragon claw, Qinchuan suddenly twisted his body and swept Band's body with his dragon tail, slamming Band to the ground. At the same time, he raised his dragon claw again. This time, his target was Band's wings. 1. Band sensed Qinchuan's intention. He flapped his wings and twisted his huge body, trying to avoid Qinchuan's dragon claw attack. However, Qinchuan opened his mouth and spat out a ball of dragon's breath at Band's back. At the same time, the pair of dragon horns on his head flickered and released a bolt of blue lightning at Band. Sizzle! Lightning streaked across the sky and bombarded Band's shell. Then, it quickly scattered and turned into an electric net that enveloped Band, paralyzing his body in an instant. Although Band recovered almost instantly after his body was paralyzed, this short period of time was enough for Qinchuan to do a lot of things. Rip! Qinchuan transformed into his human form and landed on Band's back. He grabbed Band's wings with both hands and tore them off. The severe pain made Band subconsciously want to open his mouth and scream in pain. However, just as he opened his mouth, Qinchuan, who had been waiting for a long time, threw a ball of lightning into Band's mouth. The explosion of lightning made Band's scream extremely strange and ferocious. Band struggled, trying to shake off Qinchuan, who was standing on his back. However, Qinchuan firmly held onto Band's 2 remaining wings and had no intention of letting go. While the 2 of them were in a deadlock, on the other side, the battle between Yao Rao and Sienna was very strange. Sienna's figure was very flexible. He didn't want to fight Yao Rao head-on, but he just moved around and entangled her, making it impossible for Yao Rao to get close to the altar. Yao Rao was a little annoyed by Sienna's entanglement. She took out her Tian-Yi fan and waved it at Sienna. Sienna's flexible figure suddenly became somewhat stiff. "Fire come!" Yao Rao shouted, then waved her hand and shot a red feather towards Sienna. The red feather exploded in front of Sienna, and flames instantly shrouded Sienna. Yao Rao naturally knew that this trifling flame wouldn't cause any harm to Sienna. What she wanted to do was not to injure Sienna, but to use the flame to blind Sienna's vision. When Sienna could only see the red flame in front of him and couldn't see the situation outside, Yao Rao had already bypassed Sienna on her feather and directly rushed towards the altar. Looking at the altar, which was made up of eerie white bones, Yao Rao's eyes couldn't help but flashed with a touch of disgust. She took out her phoenix feather again and inserted it into Tian-Yi fan, making the power of Tian-Yi fan obtain temporary support. Then she suddenly waved her fan towards the altar. Raging flames fell down with a loud rumble and shrouded the entire altar. The raging flames crazily burned the altar, turning it into ruins. However, what made Yao Rao's complexion unsightly was that although the altar was destroyed, the purple light beam was not damaged in the slightest. "Ha ha ha, you are too naive. The wormhole is already connected to the broodmother's nest, and with the support of the broodmother's power, now even if you destroy the altar, it will be useless, no one can stop us." Behind Yao Rao, Sienna laughed complacently, and looked at Yao Rao with disdain. He was indeed not Yao Rao's opponent, but so what, in any case, their plan had already been successfully completed, and when the broodmother's reinforcements arrived, everyone would die. After hearing Sienna's words, Yao Rao's complexion couldn't help but become even more unsightly. She coldly snorted and once again waved her fan, and this time the target of the attack was the purple light beam. However, although the raging flames were fierce, they couldn't shake the purple light beam in the slightest. Just like Sienna had said, the purple light beam had already obtained the support of the Broodmother's power, so it was absolutely impossible for Yao Rao to destroy the purple light beam with her own power. Seeing the transmission channel in the sky becoming bigger and more stable, Yao Rao's complexion also became more and more unsightly. On the other side, the battle between Qin Chuan and Band had finally come to an end. Band, who had lost 4 wings, was fiercely pressed to the ground by Qin Chuan, and violently punched his head. No matter how hard Band struggled, he couldn't break free from Qin Chuan's suppression. At this time, Band was already beaten to the point where his mind was in chaos. Qin Chuan. At this time, Zhou Lin and the others finally arrived, and when they saw Qin Chuan crazily attacking Band, they loudly said, "You go and destroy the transmission channel, leave him to us." Hearing everyone's words, Qin Chuan immediately turned his head to look at the transmission channel behind him, and when he discovered that the altar had already been destroyed, but the transmission channel hadn't disappeared, he couldn't help but fiercely wrinkle his brows. At this time, Yao Rao also came to Qin Chuan's side and said in a heavy voice, "I can't destroy this transmission channel. That Zerg warrior said that this transmission channel has obtained the support of the Broodmother's power, and we can't destroy it with our strength. Even with the might of the half-step Dao Tool Tianyi Fan and the support of the Phoenix Feather, she couldn't cause the slightest damage to the transmission channel, so Yao Rao didn't have any hope of destroying the transmission channel." Chapter 478. Hearing Yao Rao's words, the expression of Qin Chuan suddenly became gloomy. If they couldn't destroy the transmission channel, then all their previous efforts would be in vain. Retreat. Yao Rao deeply looked at Qin Chuan and said, "We have the key, so we can open the carefree secret realm in advance and retreat in time." Hearing this, Qin Chuan didn't speak. He took 2 steps forward and said to Yao Rao, "I must try again." Seeing Qin Chuan was still unwilling to give up, Yao Rao slightly frowned and said to Qin Chuan, "It is still safe for us to leave now, but if we delay any longer, then once this transmission channel is completely established, we may face Zerg's army, and at that time, we won't be able to leave even if we want to." "I know." Qin Chuan pursed his lips. "You can leave first, I will stay behind." Yao Rao raised her eyebrows and asked, "Are you saying that I am afraid of death?" "I don't mean that." Qin Chuan shook his head. "I don't want to argue with you, it's meaningless." After saying this, Qin Chuan walked towards the purple pillar of light. No matter what, he had to give it a try. Seeing Qin Chuan must try again, Yao Rao was very puzzled and asked, "Why are you so desperate? Who among those people will know that you have done so many things for them?" Hearing Yao Rao's words, Qin Chuan turned to look at her, then lightly shook his head and said, "I think you misunderstood. I did all these things not because I want to let others remember my good, and also not because I want to be some savior or some great hero. I simply want to protect the people around me, and try my best to do what I can do. It's that simple." Yao Rao was stunned. She looked at Qin Chuan's back view as he turned around and left, and suddenly she was somewhat moved in her heart. After getting used to seeing mutual deception and fighting for benefits, she thought that there would no longer be pure feelings in this world, but today Qin Chuan used practical actions to tell her that there were still pure feelings in this world, merely she had never encountered them before. In the sky, seeing Qin Chuan walking step by step towards the purple light pillar, Sai Na's sinister face couldn't help but reveal a trace of ridicule. She didn't think that Qin Chuan had the ability to destroy the wormhole. Everything was just a futile effort. On the ground, Qin Chuan stopped his footsteps, then looking at the purple light pillar before him, he slowly took out a sword from his storage ring, the bronze sword that Demon King Lion had given him. Looking at the bronze sword in his hand, Qin Chuan also didn't know whether this attack would succeed or not, but this was already the only feasible method. he could think of at present. Just when Qin Chuan was preparing to brandish the sword, Zhou Lin's figure suddenly appeared beside him, then stretched out her hand to grasp the edge of the bronze sword. The sharp edge of the sword cut Zhou Lin's finger, and a trace of pale golden blood flowed out from the wound, staining the bronze sword. Buzz! After being stained by the pale golden blood, the bronze sword suddenly issued a buzzing sound, and seemed to have become very different from before, but in the end what the difference was, Qin Chuan couldn't say. "I think I've found the way to use the metal origin, I hope it can help you." Zhou Lin looked at Qin Chuan seriously. "Let's work hard together, no matter if we win or lose, we won't regret it." Hearing Zhou Lin's words, Qin Chuan smiled slightly. Just as he was about to say something, Bai Yu's figure suddenly appeared on the other side of him. She also stretched out her hand and cut her finger on the bronze sword, dripping a small ball of sticky red blood onto the bronze sword. Facing Qin Chuan's surprised gaze, Bai Yu calmly replied, "I can only help you this much." "Thank you." Qin Chuan sincerely thanked Bai Yu. To be able to gain the recognition of the people around him at such a time, he felt that this attempt was worth it, regardless of whether it succeeded or not. Rumble! In the sky, there was a sudden clap of thunder in the teleportation channel, then an extremely terrifying aura pierced through and shrouded the sky above the unfettered secret realm. Feeling this aura, everyone's expression changed slightly, but Sai Na laughed maniacally. "Ha ha ha, do you feel it? Insignificant ants. This is the aura of the great consul of the sacred clan. How shocking and powerful it is! All of you will die in the hands of the consul. No one will leave alive." Hearing Sai Na's words, everyone's expression turned extremely ugly. If the consul really descended, then all of them would die. The owner of this aura was definitely not someone a foundation establishment stage cultivator could fight against. "Everyone back off." Qin Chuan suddenly spoke with a serious expression. "All of you, stay away from me." Everyone knew that Qin Chuan was making a final attempt, so they all moved away from Qin Chuan. Seeing this, Sai Na said disdainfully, "All of you no longer have a chance. Perhaps there's still a way out if you choose to submit now." Qin Chuan did not seem to hear Sai Na's words. He gripped the bronze sword in his hand tightly and leaned his upper body forward in a sword-drawing posture. His gaze became extremely sharp as he stared at the purple light pillar. Kacha, kacha! In the sky, an extremely thick milky white worm leg stretched out from the teleportation portal. The worm leg was covered in dark green patterns and looked exceptionally evil. "Ha ha ha, the consul is about to arrive. All of you will die." Sai Na was completely crazy at this point. Even if he had to die right now, he would be willing to do so. At this moment, Qin Chuan had already adjusted his essence, energy, and spirit to their peak state. Just as he was about to swing his sword, the runic sword in his mind seemed to have been touched by the consul's aura and suddenly trembled violently. The green smoke lingering on the sword also sensed the changes in the runic sword. A wisp of green smoke, as thin as a strand of hair, floated out of Qin Chuan's mind and attached itself to the bronze sword in Qin Chuan's hand. The bronze sword suddenly shone with a golden light and emitted an incomparably terrifying aura. The consul, who was trying his best to pass through the teleportation portal to descend into the unfettered mystic realm, seemed to have sensed something. His teleportation paused for a moment and actually started to shrink back. However, at this moment, Qin Chuan swung the sword that he had been accumulating for a long time. Light filled the sky. There was only a golden light in everyone's eyes. Other than that, they could not see anything else. This light came and went very quickly. When everyone's vision returned to normal, they saw the same scene as before. The teleportation portal was still there. Sai Na saw this scene and immediately laughed proudly. At this moment, a white shadow suddenly flashed past her eyes and fell straight to the ground. She instinctively lowered her head to look at the thing that fell to the ground. When she saw clearly what it was, her laughter stopped abruptly. She was completely stunned. The thing that fell to the ground was a leg. It belonged to the great consul. At the same time, an extremely shrill cry came from the teleportation portal. Then, the portal cracked inch by inch and exploded. Chapter 479. The bronze sword in Qinchuan's hand also exploded along with the portal. Although the bronze sword was a top-grade magic treasure, it had completely exceeded the limits of what it could withstand after being strengthened by so many forces. It was already its limit to allow Qinchuan to swing that sword. Although it was a pity, it was worth it. The explosion of the portal set off a gust of wind that wreaked havoc on the ground and swept in all directions. Qinchuan stood in the wind and looked at the figure in front of him with a smile on his face. "Senior sister, we did it." Hearing Qinchuan's words, Zhou was so excited that she couldn't control herself. She stepped forward and hugged Qinchuan tightly. Her voice was choked with emotion as she said, "Yes, we did it." No one knew better than Qinchuan how difficult it was to succeed this time. If it weren't for the runic sword helping him at the critical moment and strengthening the bronze sword, they wouldn't have succeeded. Perhaps everyone would have been sacrificed here because of his perseverance and stubbornness. This victory really didn't come easy. After the storm subsided, everything on the plain returned to normal. There was no more portal, no purple pillar of light, and no remains of the altar. If it weren't for the eye-catching insect leg in front of them, everyone would have thought that everything was just a dream and that nothing had actually happened. Qinchuan slowly walked to the insect leg and looked at the lifeless Senna kneeling in front of it. There was no sympathy on Qinchuan's face. He had never been merciful to his enemies. Zhou stood beside Qinchuan, but her gaze fell on the insect leg. Feeling the extremely terrifying energy fluctuation, she asked Qinchuan, "What kind of monster did you cut off this leg from?" Qinchuan shook his head and said, "I don't know, but I think it's very strong. It's at least stronger than an ordinary golden core cultivator." Hearing Qinchuan, Zhou deeply looked at the insect leg, then said to Qinchuan, "You better immediately put away this insect leg, don't let anyone see it." Actually, even without Zhou reminder, Qinchuan also knew that this insect leg was extremely precious. If he just put it here, it would definitely attract some unnecessary covetous eyes. But his storage ring was only 10 square meters in size, so it was basically unable to fit this nearly 20 meters long insect leg. "I'll lend this to you for the time being." At this time, Yarao walked over, then casually threw a very exquisite diamond bracelet to Qinchuan. Qinchuan took the bracelet, looked at Yarao with a surprised expression and asked, This is my spare storage equipment." Seeing the storage ring on Qinchuan's hand, Yarao curled her lips and said, "Compared to the storage ring on your hand, the space inside it is much bigger." Hearing this, Qinchuan subconsciously looked at the space inside the diamond bracelet. It was no less than 100 square meters in size, which was equivalent to 10 of his storage rings. It was more than enough to store the insect leg. Qinchuan looked at Yarao and chuckled, "Thank you." After saying this, Qinchuan turned around and put the insect leg into the diamond bracelet. The surrounding people saw Qinchuan's action and didn't have any objections. After all, this insect leg was cut off by Qinchuan, so it belonged to Qinchuan. If it wasn't for Qinchuan, then perhaps they would already be dead. Everyone gathered around and looked at Sienna kneeling on the ground. Chen Chongqing stepped forward and kicked Sienna's corpse while cursing, although it is said that people should respect the dead, but I don't think Zerg can be considered as a human. She almost killed us, so I don't want to respect her. Hearing Chen Chongqing's words, everyone didn't know whether to laugh or cry. They didn't care about Chen Chongqing venting his anger on Sienna's corpse. If it wasn't for the matter of face, they would have also stepped forward and kicked Sienna's corpse. "This is the last Zerg warrior we found. She is already dead, so there shouldn't be any other Zerg warriors." Qinchuan pursed his lips and said to everyone, "From the looks of it, we should already be safe. Not just us, but the whole world is safe. Chen Chongqing smiled and said to Qin Chuan, Boss, you didn't see it yourself, but your last sword move was simply awesome. I'm willing to call you the strongest swordsman. Hearing Chen Chongqing's words, Su Kuang coughed softly and said, It's just the sword nurturing technique. It's still a bit lacking to call me the strongest swordsman. Chen Chongqing laughed and said to Su Kuang, I understand how you feel. You and Boss are on par with each other, both of you are the strongest swordsmen. After going through this series of events, everyone's relationship had become very strong. Even if they made some harmless jokes to liven up the atmosphere, no one would really mind. Qin Chuan looked at the joyous atmosphere in front of him and was in a very good mood. Everyone, share these. Just as everyone who survived the disaster was chatting and laughing, Qin Chuan suddenly took out dozens of insect leg meat from the diamond bracelet and said to everyone, I'll take most of the things, but everyone has contributed, so this is what you should get. Everyone looked at the insect leg meat in Qin Chuan's hand and quieted down. Although they didn't know what realm the owner of the insect leg was in, there was no doubt that the insect leg meat was an extremely precious treasure for them now. It could be said that they were very lucky to be able to get a thumb-sized one, let alone a football-sized one. Boss, I won't be polite with you. Chen Chongqing was the first to take the insect leg meat in Qin Chuan's hand. He knew that if no one took the lead, some people would be embarrassed to reach out. When everyone saw Chen Chongqing taking the insect leg meat from Qin Chuan's hand with a smile, they also reached out and took the insect leg meat from Qin Chuan's hand. At this time, everyone looked at the insect leg meat in each other's hand, and their face exposed a touch of joy. At this moment, they truly understood the meaning of sharing blessings and misfortune together. Qin Chuan, this insect leg meat is really very important for me, thank you for your gift. Yaorao looked at Qin Chuan with a subtle look. In fact, she wanted to trade some insect leg meat with Qin Chuan before, but she was too embarrassed to open her mouth because she knew the value of this insect leg meat too well. She clearly knew how precious this was. When Qin Chuan heard this, he laughed and said, Okay, don't look like you owe me a lot of money. We are all friends, brothers and sisters, and we have gone through life and death difficulties together. Now that we have a harvest, if I take it all by myself, then it would be too unsightly. Although it is still unsightly, but at least I feel more comfortable in my heart. When everyone heard Qin Chuan's words, they all laughed. They would always remember this friendship in their hearts. Chapter 480. Star Dragon City. Inside the ancestral hall, Qin Yiming looked at the shattered jade tablet with an ashen face and said angrily, Who can tell me what's going on? Facing Qin Yiming's roar, everyone lowered their heads. No one dared to respond. Speak. Why isn't anyone speaking? Qin Yiming roared. Aren't all of you very eloquent? Why are you all mute now? Dong dong dong. A series of footsteps came from outside. Qin Ju, who was wearing a military uniform, walked into the ancestral hall. He frowned at the crowd gathered here and asked, What happened? Seeing Qin Ju arrive, Qin Yiming pointed at the shattered jade tablet, unable to say anything. Qin Ju looked in the direction Qin Yiming was pointing at. When she saw the shattered jade tablet, her expression suddenly changed. She exclaimed, This is Hao Xuan's jade tablet? Qin Yiming nodded and said sorrowfully, Hao Xuan's jade tablet is broken, and his soul is destroyed. Every direct descendant of the Qin clan would use their blood to condense a jade tablet and place it in the ancestral hall after they were born. If they died, the jade tablet would crack. If their soul was destroyed, the jade tablet would shatter. At this moment, Qin Haoshuan's jade tablet had been completely shattered. This meant that Qin Haoshuan's soul had been destroyed and he had completely disappeared from this world. Big brother, my condolences. Qin Ju looked at Qin Yiming sadly. Haoshuan is in the carefree secret realm. Perhaps he died at the hands of the demon clan. They had no way of knowing what had happened in the carefree secret realm. They could only wait until the carefree secret realm closed before they could investigate the cause of Qin Haoxuan's death. At that time, they would naturally seek revenge. Why did Haoxuan die out of so many people? Qin Yiming roared. Why didn't that bastard die? Why didn't that bastard die for Haoxuan? Qin Ju, who originally wanted to comfort Qin Yiming, heard these words, and his expression suddenly turned ugly. She was also very sad and heartbroken that Qin Haoxuan had died. She could also understand Qin Yiming's sadness and heartache, but there was no reason to curse others and let others die for him. Big brother, rest well. Qin Ju didn't know what she should say at this moment. Looking at Qin Yiming's state, no matter what she said, Qin Yiming probably wouldn't listen to her. Therefore, she could only choose to leave temporarily and bear the grief and pain brought about by Qin Haoxuan's death alone. After the incident with Zerg, the relationship between the human and demon clans was much more harmonious than before. Although there was no way for them to put their arms around each other's shoulders and call each other brothers, at least they would not fight to the death like enemies. Such a change subtly affected all the human and demon clans in the carefree secret realm. Until the day the carefree secret realm was about to close, the entire carefree secret realm was extremely quiet and peaceful. In another 2 hours or so, the unfettered mystery plane will close. Qin Chuan looked at the pass in his hand. As long as the pass lit up, they would be teleported out. As for where they would land, no one knew. Are you very happy? Yao Rao looked at Qin Chuan. You can finally get away from me, this witch. You must be very excited. Hearing this, Qin Chuan glanced at Yao Rao and said with a smile, You seem to be very reluctant to leave me? You think too much. I am the princess of the demon clan, the pearl of the demon emperor. I don't like a stinking brat like you. Yao Rao rolled her eyes at Qin Chuan. I just want to remind you in a friendly manner. You better remember the agreement between us. Within half a year after leaving the carefree secret realm, you must come to our heavenly monster mountain as a guest. Qin Chuan nodded and said, I will try my best. Qin Haoxuan's death would definitely set off a huge wave after the carefree secret realm closed. He also didn't know when this storm would pass, so he didn't dare to guarantee when he would be able to go to Heavenly Monster Mountain as a guest. He could only say that he would try his best. Not try your best, but you must. Yao Rao looked at Qin Chuan with a subtle expression. If you don't want to die, you better listen to me. Having heard this, Qin Chuan lightly raised his eyebrows and asked, What, if I don't go, are you going to kill me? It's not that I want to kill you, but your body won't be able to bear it. Yao Rao stretched out her finger and pointed at Qin Chuan's chest. Have you forgotten that you had once eaten 2 pills I gave you? Hearing Yao Rao, Qin Chuan was startled for a moment, then asked in astonishment, Don't tell me that those pills have some side effects? The side effects won't poison you to death, but I'm afraid it will be very difficult for you to be too far away from me in this lifetime. Yao Rao looked at Qin Chuan with a pondering expression, then said with a smile, The pills I gave you were a secret medicine refined from my heart's essence and blood. Once this medicine is taken, it can quickly heal the injuries on the body without any side effect. Of course, this is only for me, if other people take this secret medicine. Looking at the strange smile on Yao Rao's face, Qin Chuan suddenly had a bad premonition in his heart, so he couldn't help but asked, What will happen to other people after taking it? Yao Rao restrained the smile on her face, then seriously said to Qin Chuan, We will become life and death partners. If I live, you live. If I die, you die. Having heard this, Qin Chuan looked at Yao Rao in shock. Are you sure you are not deceiving me? What's the benefit of deceiving you with this kind of words? Yao Rao spread out her hand and said, At that time when I gave you that pill for the first time, I had already told you that there would be side effects. But at that time you didn't wait for me to finish my words and just swallowed the pill, so you can't blame me, right? Recalling the matter that had happened at that time, Qin Chuan couldn't help but have some headache. If he had known earlier that this pill would have this kind of side effects, then he would have thought thrice before taking it, but facing the threat of Cook, even if he knew about the side effects, he would still choose to take it. Seeing Qin Chuan's helpless expression, Yao Rao's mood was also very good, so she said with a smile, "Now you are already my person. If you are away from me for too long, then you will often miss me, and my figure will appear in your mind from time to time, and you won't be able to get rid of it. At that time, if you still don't come to find me, then you will miss me so much that you will fall sick, and not to mention you will easily suffer from cultivation deviation, so much so that there is a possibility that your mental illness will break out and you will become a madman." Well, I have said all that I should say. As for the specifics of how to do it, that is your matter. Yao Rao stood up and said to Qin Chuan, "If you don't believe me, then it doesn't matter. After the side effects appear, you will know that I am not deceiving you." "Hey, don't tell me that there is no way to remove this side effects?" Qin Chuan couldn't help but said, "You must have a way." "Of course I have a way." Yao Rao slightly narrowed her eyes. "But why should I remove it?" Chapter 481. On Northern Mountain, tens of thousands of people were gathered. Today was the day when the carefree secret realm closed. As long as one had a pass, they could be teleported out when the carefree secret realm closed. Northern Mountain was both an entrance and an exit. At that time, most people would be teleported to Northern Mountain, and only a few would be scattered outside. At the foot of the mountain, Ningya, who was wearing a purple cheongsam, looked at the Qin family members walking over from not far away. A look of doubt flashed across her face. Su Yuluo, who was wearing a JK uniform and looked extremely obedient and cute, tilted her head and said to Ningya in a childish voice, "The Qin family members don't look good. Did something happen?" Ningya shook her head and said, "I'm not sure. Ask Qin Ju." Su Yuluo said, "She should know better." Ningya glanced at Qin Ju, who was dressed in black, walking among the Qin family members. She hesitated for a moment, then shook her head and said, "Forget it. If there's anything, she should inform me." Su Yuluo saw that Ningya didn't want to ask, so she didn't say much. She looked up at the sky and pouted. "Why aren't they back yet? What time is it?" Just as Su Yuluo's voice fell, a beam of light suddenly appeared in the gloomy sky. A huge bronze door appeared in the sky, and with a rumbling sound, the bronze door slowly opened. After 2 months, the unfettered secret realm opened once again. Upon seeing this scene, everyone on North Dingbei Mountain revealed a look of anticipation on their faces. Buzz. Numerous figures appeared in the open space around North Stabilizing Mountain in picturesque disorder. Some of them were alone while others were in groups of 2s and 3s. Every single one of them had an excited look on their faces. Their eyes were brimming with tears of excitement as they once again returned to a familiar world. "We're back. We're back alive. Great. We're finally back. I can finally go home." Everyone looked at the figures who had returned from the carefree secret realm alive. They were all looking forward to finding familiar figures. Some were overjoyed while others were sad. In the crowd, Qin Chuan looked around. He couldn't find Ningyu immediately, but he saw Qin Yiming immediately. At the same time, Qin Yiming also noticed him. Whoosh! Qin Yiming's figure flickered and appeared before Qin Chuan in the blink of an eye. He looked at Qin Chuan expressionlessly and asked, "How Chuan is dead? Do you know?" Facing Qin Yiming's question, Qin Chuan's face could not help but reveal a complicated expression. He calmly nodded and said, "I know. You really know." Qin Yiming's face suddenly revealed a ferocious expression. "Who killed him?" "This I killed him." Without waiting for Qin Chuan to finish his words, Su Kuang's figure suddenly appeared on the side. He looked at Qin Yiming indifferently and said coldly, "All those who betrayed the human race should die." Hearing Su Kuang's words, Qin Yiming suddenly turned his head to look at Su Kuang. His eyes burned with the flames of anger as he angrily said, "You killed Haoxuan? You dare to kill Haoxuan? Who gave you the guts?" Facing Qin Yiming's continuous questioning, Su Kuang did not answer. He looked up to the sky and roared, attracting the attention of the surrounding people. Then he loudly said, "Fellow human race who were lucky enough to return from the unfettered secret realm, let me ask you, does Qin Haoxuan deserve to die? Does he deserve to be killed?" The rest of the people who did not know the truth of the matter were extremely surprised when they heard Su Kuang's sudden roar. Qin Haoxuan was dead? What shocked them even more was that those who returned from the unfettered secret realm responded to Su Kuang in unison. "He deserves to die. Qin Haoxuan deserves to die." At first, the shouts rose and fell one after another, but gradually, they became unified and clear. All the people who returned from the unfettered secret realm agreed that Qin Haoxuan deserved to die. Such a situation shocked everyone, and it also made Qin Yiming's face become extremely gloomy. "What nonsense are you talking about?" Qin Yiming was unable to restrain his anger. "Haoxuan is an elite of the human race, a rare genius. Why should he deserve to die?" He felt that these people must be crazy. They must have been used and threatened. That was why they shouted such lawless words. Qin Haoxuan betrayed the human race and joined Zerg. He is a traitor, and everyone has the right to kill him. That's right. Qin Haoxuan colluded with Zerg to murder us. He is not fit to be a human. Qin Haoxuan deserves to die. He is not fit to be a human. If the Qin family wants to protect Qin Haoxuan, you will become the enemy of the entire human race. Qin Yiming was stunned when he heard everyone's angry rebuttal. He could not believe what he had heard. Qin Haoxuan was a traitor? Betrayed the human race? Colluded with Zerg? What's going on? At this moment, Qin Ju's figure also came to Qin Chuan's side. She looked at Qin Chuan with a serious expression and asked, "What's going on?" Qin Chuan sighed and said to Qin Ju, "It's a long story, but those people are right. Qin Haoxuan colluded with Zerg to frame us. The evidence is irrefutable." T. Qin Yiming stared at Qin Chuan with a ferocious expression. Where did Zerg come from in the unfettered secret realm? Qin Chuan did not say anything. He only took out Sai Na's corpse from his storage ring and threw it on the ground. He replied, "This is the evidence." Qin Yiming's face stiffened when he saw the hideous corpse of Zerg that was thrown on the ground by Qin Chuan. Qin Ju's expression changed drastically. To ordinary people, Zerg might be an unfamiliar race. However, to them, Zerg was not unfamiliar at all. It was just that they could not figure out why Zerg would appear in the unfettered secret realm, and why Qin Haoxuan would collude with Zerg. The witnesses and evidence are all here. Do you have anything else to say? Ningya's figure suddenly appeared in front of Qin Chuan and protected him behind her. She looked calmly at Qin Yiming and said coldly, "If you have doubts in your heart, you can slowly investigate the truth. If Qin Haoxuan really colluded with Zerg to frame the young talents of the human race, I'm afraid your Qin clan will have to explain to everyone what exactly is going on." Qin Yiming's expression changed again and again when he heard Ningya's words. However, he could not say a word. This was because he knew very well that if Qin Haoxuan really colluded with Zerg, it would definitely be a capital offense. An unforgivable capital offense. Patriarch Qin, I, Su Kuang, can swear that I will tell you everything that happened in the unfettered secret realm in detail and in a fair and just manner. You can find anyone to investigate this matter. If I'm biased in any way, you can punish me however you want. Su Kuang looked at Qin Yiming calmly. Others might be afraid of Qin Yiming, but Su Kuang, who had the deity sword villa behind him, was not afraid. Chapter 482. The entire northern mountain was so quiet that one could hear a pin drop. No one would have thought that the Qilin son of the Qin family would die in the carefree secret realm. What was even more unexpected was that all the participants felt that Qin Haoshuan's death was a good thing. Some people didn't know much about the insectoids, but those who had some understanding of the insectoids were looking at Qin Yiming with a strange look in their eyes. If it was just Su Kuang and Qin Chuan's side of the story, they might have been suspicious. However, everyone was saying that Qin Haoshuan colluded with Zerg. Even the other members of the Qin family, who entered the carefree secret realm, lowered their heads in shame and didn't say a word. In addition, the corpses of Zerg's soldiers that were placed beside Qin Chuan's feet proved that Qin Haoshuan had indeed committed an unforgivable crime. Zerg was the mortal enemy of the human race, the natural enemy. Qin Haoshuan colluded with Zerg. If he was convicted, even if he came back alive, he would be sentenced to death. The Qin family would also be implicated. Now it seemed that Qin Haoshuan's death in the carefree secret realm had saved the Qin family. At this moment, Qin Yiming no longer thought about avenging Qin Haoshuan. Compared to this, the most important thing was to protect the Qin family from the public opinion that was about to explode. I will investigate this matter thoroughly. Qin Yiming looked deeply at Qin Chuan, then looked at Su Kuang. I swear on my identity as the Qin family's head that I will not wrongly accuse any good person in this matter, and I will not let any bad person go. After saying such righteous words, Qin Yiming turned around and left. Seeing Qin Yiming leave, Qin Zhu looked at Qin Chuan with a complicated expression. He said to Qin Chuan, "I'll go back and check on the situation. I'll come find you another day." Qin Chuan nodded and watched Qin Zhu leave with the Qin family. Ningya looked at Qin Chuan and said faintly, "Although she treats you very well, she is still a member of the Qin clan. It's impossible for her to ignore the Qin clan. This incident will definitely have a great impact on the Qin clan. Even she may be affected." Qin Chuan sighed helplessly when he heard this. Of course, he knew that this matter would definitely have a huge impact on the Qin family. At this moment, he could only hope that Qin Zhu wouldn't be too affected. "Su Kuang, thank you." Qin Chuan turned to look at Su Kuang and sincerely thanked him. If it wasn't for Su Kuang standing up for him, perhaps the situation would have become even worse. At that time, when Su Kuang killed Qin Haoshuan, who had no power to fight back, he didn't feel anything special. However, judging from what happened today, it was clear that Su Kuang had anticipated the Qin clan's reaction and was drawing the fire for him. "There's no need to thank me." Su Kuang smiled at Qin Chuan. "It's all of us who owe you. I only did something insignificant, that's all." Qin Haoshuan had committed an unforgivable mistake. No matter who killed Qin Haoshuan, the Qin clan couldn't pursue the matter. In the end, he didn't take any risk. "Qin Chuan." Yi Qing Ning slowly walked over from not far away. She looked at Qin Chuan with a subtle expression. "This time, our Yi clan will stand on the side of justice. This is my attitude and also our Yi clan's attitude." Yi Qing Ning's words to Qin Chuan were clearly expressing the Yi clan's attitude. If the Qin clan wanted to harm Qin Chuan, their Yi clan wouldn't stand by and do nothing. Upon hearing this, Qin Chuan smiled and said to Yi Qing Ning, "Thank you very much. If I have time in the future, I will visit your Yi clan and thank your grandfather in person." Yi Qing Ning looked deeply at Qin Chuan and said, "Then it's settled. I'll be waiting for you." After saying this, Yi Qing Ning turned and left. Not far away, Yi Cheng was waiting for her. At this time, Yi Cheng couldn't wait to sit down on the airship and listen to Yi Qing Ning talk about what happened in the carefree secret realm. "Let's go back to school." Ningya stretched out her hand and patted Qin Chuan's shoulder. "When the time comes, you have to tell me what happened in the carefree secret realm. It just so happens that I also have a lot of questions to ask teacher." Qin Chuan smiled and said to Ningya, "When the time comes, don't be surprised by my harvest." Ningya thought that Qin Chuan was just joking when he said not to be surprised by his harvest, but when she saw the 10,000-year-old spiritual herbs that Qin Chuan took out from his storage ring, she was really shocked. Looking at the spiritual herbs on the floor of the living room, Su Yolua's eyes were full of little stars and she kept exclaiming. Qinchuan, tell me, what did you do? I also went to the carefree secret realm in the past, but I've never seen a 10,000-year-old spiritual herb there. Ningya was also very surprised and asked curiously, did you go to an unknown area? In Ningya's opinion, only an unknown area in the carefree secret realm could possibly have so many spiritual herbs. Qinchuan chuckled and said, it's not an unknown area. You also know that there is a herb garden in the carefree residence. Hearing Qinchuan's words, Ningya and Su Yuluo were stunned at the same time. They stared at Qinchuan with round eyes. After confirming that Qinchuan wasn't joking, they couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air and said in disbelief, You entered the carefree residence? No one had been able to enter the carefree residence for thousands of years, but Qinchuan had entered it? Yes, Qinchuan nodded. These spiritual herbs came from the carefree residence. I've already emptied it. Hearing Qinchuan's affirmative answer, Ningya felt a little dizzy. At this time, she couldn't care less about maintaining her composure and asked urgently, How did you do it? That's a long story. By the way, teacher, do you know about the purple star divine eyes? Qinchuan suddenly asked about the purple star divine eyes. He even pursed his lips at Lu Zi, motioning for Lu Zi to show her the purple star divine eyes. After receiving Qinchuan's signal, Lu Zi released the purple star divine eyes. Ningya and Su Yuluo looked at the purple star divine eyes above Lu Zi's head, and were stunned again. This is an innate spiritual treasure. I'm not sure if it's an innate spiritual treasure or not, but it's indeed a spiritual treasure. Su Yuluo swallowed her saliva and asked Qinchuan cutely, What other treasures did you get? Just take them all out at once. Don't torture us like this. Qinchuan looked around and said to Chen Chongqing, Chongqing, move that sofa. It's taking up a little space. Chen Chongqing smiled and agreed. Okay, I'll move it now. Seeing that Chen Chongqing really went to move the sofa, Ningya and Su Yuluo couldn't help but look at each other and then at Qinchuan. They were really curious about how many treasures Qinchuan had dug out from the carefree secret realm. Could it be that the living room still didn't have enough space? Chapter 483. When Qinchuan took out the worm leg and placed it on the floor of the living room, Ningya and Su Yuluo almost went crazy. Looking at the huge worm leg and feeling the terrifying aura emanating from it, Su Yuluo involuntarily released her complete form and turned into a scorching fireball. Ningya's situation was not much better than Su Yuluo's. Her expression was grave as if she was facing a formidable enemy. Hey, is it that exaggerated? Qinchuan looked at Su Yuluo, who was like a small son, in astonishment. Was she preparing to fight with the worm leg? Su Yuluo barely managed to stabilize her mind, then released her complete form and returned to her normal state. Her eyes were fixed on the worm leg, and she said to Qinchuan, It's not that I'm exaggerating, but your cultivation is too low to feel how amazing the pressure released by this thing is. Su Yuluo turned to look deeply at Qinchuan and said seriously, The moment you took out this thing, I even thought that a nascent soul stage cultivator had suddenly landed on the flying ship. Hearing Su Yuluo's words, everyone was stunned for a moment. Ningya also asked Qinchuan with a serious expression, Who is the owner of this leg? How did you get it? Seeing Ningya so serious, Qinchuan roughly explained what had happened. After hearing Qinchuan's explanation, Ningya couldn't help but look at the hollowed-out part of the worm leg. Then she stared straight at Qinchuan and asked, You gave everyone a piece of leg meat the size of a football? Qinchuan nodded and said, Yes, after all, everyone. Before Qinchuan could finish speaking, Ningya had already slapped the back of his head. Her breathing quickened as she said, You're really willing to part with your life. It's fine if you give such a precious treasure to your own family, but you're so generous to give it to outsiders. You're simply a prodigal son. Looking at Qin Chuan's indifferent expression, Ningya's heart ached to death. Even if Qin Chuan were to give away those 10,000-year-old elixirs, she wouldn't feel any heartache. But to give away more than a dozen football-sized thighs, her heart really ached to death. When everyone saw Ningya's heartbroken and sad look, their eyes were extremely strange. In the past, Ningya had always been calm and indifferent, as if she had seen through the world of mortals. This was the first time they saw Ningya lose her composure. Qin Chuan, no matter what, I'm your elder and your teacher, right? Su Yuluo looked at Qin Chuan with a smile. I don't want much leg meat, just 2 football-sized pieces. Smack. Ningya angrily slapped Su Yuluo on the head and said angrily, Don't even think about it. Su Yuluo was flustered and exasperated. Are you trying to block my path to immortality? Cut the crap. Ningya glared at Su Yuluo. At most, 1 piece the size of a palm is enough. Why do you want so much? Su Yuluo's momentum suddenly weakened and she whispered, Then it's a deal. 1 piece the size of a palm. Seeing that Su Yuluo was settled, Qin Chuan couldn't help but ask Ningya doubtfully, Teacher, is this leg meat really that valuable? You actually described it as valuable? Ningya looked at Qin Chuan. Even if you give me all the money in the world for this leg meat, I won't do it. Hearing Ningya's words, everyone's faces showed a touch of curiosity. Was this leg meat really so precious? In the face of everyone's curiosity and confusion, Ningya took a deep breath. After calming herself down, she explained to everyone, As far as I know, the elite warriors of the insect race are equivalent to the Foundation establishment cultivators of our human race. The Vanguard is equivalent to the Golden Core cultivators of our human race, and the Consul is equivalent to the nascent soul cultivators. You can think of it as the leg of a Yuanying cultivator. After hearing Ningya's explanation, everyone couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. They looked at the insect leg in shock. They never thought that the Consul of the insect race would be as powerful as a nascent soul stage cultivator. Ningya took a deep look at Qin Chuan and said, What shocked me the most was that you could cut off this leg. You know, even with my strength, I can't do that. Ningya was now a perfected golden core cultivator, and was only 1 step away from the nascent soul stage. Even she couldn't cut off this insect leg. Didn't that mean that Qin Chuan's attack was comparable to a nascent soul cultivator's attack? No, it was a Yuanying cultivator's attack. Otherwise, it was absolutely impossible to cut off the Consul's leg. Facing everyone's shocked gazes, Qin Chuan grinned and said, At that time, there were many factors that contributed to that sword strike. It wasn't my own effort. Moreover, that bronze sword was also a spiritual artifact. To be exact, 99% of the credit for that sword strike came from the runic sword. Without the help of the runic sword, he might not even have been able to hit the Consul's leg, let alone cut it off. As for the bronze sword, it was not a spiritual artifact, but a special high-grade magic artifact. The reason why Qin Chuan said that the bronze sword was a spiritual artifact was naturally to cover up the runic sword. Hearing Qin Chuan's words, everyone deeply agreed. At that time, they had seen Bai Yu and Zhou Lin smear blood on the sword. In addition, the bronze sword was a spiritual artifact. Under the condition that the spiritual artifact was completely destroyed, it was not impossible to cut off the Consul's leg. At that time, the Consul was in the middle of a transmission and was not on guard. It's understandable that he could succeed. Ningya touched her chin and said to Qin Chuan, Speaking of which, it was a coincidence that allowed you to obtain such a great opportunity. Qin Chuan nodded and said, That's true. At that time, I just felt that the Consul's momentum was very strong. I didn't expect him to be in existence comparable to a nascent soul stage cultivator. It's not an exaggeration to say that this leg meat is definitely a treasure comparable to a panacea. Ningya looked at Qin Chuan with some envy and said, The outer shell of this insect leg can be used to refine a magic artifact or even a spiritual artifact. If the leg meat is refined, it can also become an existence comparable to a panacea. Take me for example. If I can eat enough leg meat, maybe I can reach the nascent soul stage soon. Hearing Ningya's words, Qin Chuan grinned and said, Teacher, you don't have to hint. The leg meat is here. You can take as much as you want. Qin Chuan would never be stingy with Ningya. Not to mention the leg meat, even if Ningya wanted all of it, he would not frown. Hearing Qin Chuan's words, Su Yuluo immediately jumped out and asked, Why can Ningya take as much as she wants, but I only have a palm-sized piece? Ningya looked at Su Yuluo with a smile and said proudly, Because Qin Chuan is my student, not yours. Chapter 484. While Qin Chuan and the others were happily returning to the Black Moon Combat Academy, and Su Yuluo was pestering Ningya for more leg meat, the Qin family finally understood everything that had happened in the carefree secret realm. Qin Haoshuan had indeed betrayed the human race and joined Zerg. After confirming this matter, Qin Yiming was furious and cursed before he could even finish reading the investigation results. Unfilial son. Unfilial son. You didn't want to be part of the human race and actually colluded with Zerg. Damned unfilial son. Seeing Qin Yiming so angry, the surrounding people sighed and didn't know what to say. They could still understand the matter of Little Zhong Mountain, but the matter of the insect eggs and the subsequent attack on Qin Chuan and the others really made them find any reason to defend Qin Haoshuan. Before knowing the truth, Qin Ju's mood was as painful as his mood was now. She could tolerate Qin Haoshuan targeting Qin Chuan again and again, but she couldn't tolerate Qin Haoshuan's betrayal of the entire human race. Big brother, please ask father to come out of seclusion. Although Qin Haoshuan was already dead, the matter had already happened. Their Qin family was bound to be targeted because of this. If they couldn't deal with this matter properly in time, it might cause a fatal blow to their Qin family. Now, only by asking Qin Chongshao to come out of seclusion and use his name to intimidate everyone could the Qin family ensure that they could safely survive this calamity. Unfilial son. Qin Yiming's face was filled with grief and indignation. Father will probably be furious when he finds out about this. There's nothing we can do about it. Qin Ju was helpless. If the family is implicated at this time, there might be a change in the transformation of my 10th Legion into a battleship force. Hearing Qin Ju's words, Qin Yiming's expression couldn't help but turn ugly. Originally, their Qin family's reputation could be improved by a level with the transformation of the 10th Legion into a battleship force. Now that something had happened to Qin Haoshuan, it would be good if they could fall a little less, let alone reach a higher level. Haoshuan dragged the family down, and even dragged you down. Qin Yiming sighed. His entire person seemed to have aged dozens of years in an instant, and he was no longer as strong as before. Patriarch. Qin Hu suddenly took a step forward and whispered to Qin Yiming, I've read through the descriptions of the remaining people and realized that they all mentioned one thing. They once saw Qin Chuan slash through the teleportation portal from afar and saw a bug leg fall from the sky with their own eyes. Hearing Qin Hu's words, Qin Ju frowned slightly and asked, What are you trying to say? Qin Hu lowered his head slightly and said to Qin Ju, Su Kuang mentioned in his narration that the Zerg warriors said that the Zerg expert who is teleporting is the consul. When Qin Ju and Qin Yiming heard Qin Hu's words, they instantly thought of the meaning of the consul. Their bodies couldn't help but tremble, and their faces were filled with shock. Qin Yiming even took the story written by Su Kuang from Qin Hu's hands and read it carefully. Consul. It really is an archon. Qin Yiming handed the notebook in his hand to Qin Ju. Qin Chuan actually has the leg of an archon from Zerg. Qin Ju didn't look at the notebook. He looked at Qin Yiming with a deep gaze and asked, What do you want to do? Facing Qin Ju's question, Qin Yiming looked deeply at Qin Ju and said, As you can see, everyone thinks that Haoshuan is a traitor and Zerg's lackey. You know very well how big of a blow this matter will cause to our Qin family. However, Qin Chuan is the hero in everyone's hearts. He saved everyone in the carefree secret realm time and time again. If we can bring Qin Chuan back to the family, with the reputation he has accumulated in the carefree secret realm, it will definitely be able to offset the negative impact of Qin Chuan's matter on our Qin family. This is the best choice for us. Without waiting for Qin Ju to speak, Qin Yiming added, I can swear to you that as long as Qin Chuan is willing to return to the family, I will definitely nurture Qin Chuan as the future successor of the family and satisfy all his needs. Whoever dares to harm Qin Chuan will become the enemy of the entire Qin family. Facing Qin Yiming's words, Qin Ju was unmoved. He said coldly, So, do you want to add another premise? As a member of the Qin family, Qin Chuan should contribute the insect leg to the family, right? Hearing this, Qin Yiming's expression couldn't help but change slightly. Then, he said, You must know how precious that insect leg is. This insect leg won't be of any use in Qin Chuan's hands. However, if you and I can obtain it, perhaps our Qin family will give birth to 2 more nascent soul cultivators. 3 nascent soul cultivators in one family, do you know what this means? 3 nascent soul cultivators in one family. If their Qin family could really do this, then their Qin family would definitely become the undisputed number 1 family in the Star Dragon Federation. Looking at Qin Yiming's excited expression, Qin Ju couldn't help but reveal a bitter expression. He said in a low voice, Big brother, do you look like someone who just lost his son? Do you only have benefits in your eyes? Hearing Qin Ju's words, Qin Yiming's expression immediately turned ugly. Third sister, it's been so many years. Hasn't it always been your wish to welcome Qin Chuan back to the family? That's right, this is my wish. However, I hope that you can treat Qin Chuan as your own junior and relative, not as a vassal of the insect leg. Qin Ju was heartbroken. Ask yourself, if you didn't have the insect leg and your reputation, how would you fight Qin Chuan? Would you be willing to let him return to the family and carefully nurture him? What nonsense are you talking about? Qin Yiming flew into a rage out of humiliation. Qin Ju's words had completely hit the sore spot in his heart. Don't you know what I'm talking about? Qin Ju looked at Qin Yiming sadly. Big brother, I hope that Qin Chuan can live outside. At least he has friends and teachers outside. It's not like here, where he can't get anything other than being used. Bastard! Qin Yiming was furious. Am I doing this for my own sake? Am I not thinking for you, for the entire family? Don't say any more. Qin Ju shook his head. I don't want to participate in the family's matters anymore. Do whatever you want. I'll leave later. Unless father summons me, I won't come back. After this incident, Qin Ju had completely given up on the family and his big brother. After saying this, Qin Ju didn't care about Qin Yiming's reaction. He turned around and walked out. Qin Yiming looked at Qin Ju's back as he left. He was unable to restrain his anger and ruthlessly smashed everything in his hands. When the surrounding people saw Qin Yiming's performance, their expressions were extremely complicated. After today, the sky might change. Chapter 485. Yi Residence. Yi Cheng looked at the football-sized thigh meat on the table with a serious expression. After a long time, he looked at Yi Qingning sitting beside him with difficulty and asked, This was given to you by Qin Chuan? And many of you have it? Yi Qingning nodded. Indeed, Qin Chuan gave each of us a portion of this size. Grandfather, this thigh meat must be very valuable, right? Although Yi Qingning knew that this thigh meat was a treasure, she didn't know its exact value. Hearing Yi Qingning's words, Yi Cheng looked at her with a subtle expression and said in a serious tone, To be honest, if I were Qin Chuan, I wouldn't be so generous as to give such a precious thing to so many of you. The value of this thigh meat is immeasurable. There aren't many things in our Star Dragon Federation that are more valuable than this thigh meat. Even if someone exchanged it with a half-step Dao tool, I might not agree. Yi Qingning looked at Yi Cheng in shock. From Yi Cheng's words, it wasn't hard to tell that the value of this thigh meat far exceeded that of a half-step Dao tool. Seeing the shock on Yi Qingning's face, Yi Cheng pursed his lips slightly and said to Yi Qingning, "Qingning, this thing has an immeasurable value to you. However, it can't be shown at this stage, so grandfather wants to make a deal with you." Hearing Yi Cheng's words, Yi Qingning was slightly taken aback. Then, she smiled gently. "Grandfather, there's no need to use the word deal between us. If you need this thigh meat, then take it." "No." Yi Cheng shook his head and said, "Although I'm your grandfather, I can't just take away such a treasure. If I really do that, then I've lived for 100 years in vain." Hearing Yi Cheng's words, Yi Qingning didn't insist. Instead, she asked, "Grandfather, how do you plan to exchange it with me?" Yi Cheng smiled and said to Yi Qingning, "After hearing what happened in the carefree secret realm, grandfather feels that it's too dangerous for a girl to travel alone. So, I'm going to give you the floating leaf." "Floating leaf?" Yi Qingning was extremely surprised. "Grandpa, has the floating leaf been successfully developed?" Yi Cheng nodded and said to Yi Qingning, "The floating leaf has indeed been successfully developed, and it was developed based on your physical attributes. Therefore, the floating leaf is very suitable for you." At this point, Yi Cheng clapped his hands. With Yi Cheng's signal, someone soon pushed a 3-meter-tall trolley into the living room. When Yi Qingning saw this, she stood up excitedly and walked to the trolley. She reached out to remove the red silk covering the trolley. In a square transparent display case, a white and green battlesuit stood there quietly, showing off its elegance and power to Yi Qingning. Yi Cheng stood up and slowly walked to Yi Qingning's side. He chuckled and said to Yi Qingning, "This is the floating leaf Mark IV. It's been modified and improved 4 times on the basis of the original floating leaf. It's 198 meters tall and weighs 662 kilograms. It's equipped with 2 high-vibration swords, a Type 9 alloy shield, and 2 Meteor-class laser guns. Other than these basic weapon configurations, it also has an air-piercing cannon tailored for your sound attack attribute, as well as a dynamic stealth function. It's no exaggeration to say that the floating leaf Mark IV is both offensive and defensive. It's definitely one of the best battlesuits in the world today." Hearing Yi Cheng's introduction of the floating leaf Mark IV, Yi Qingning's eyes flashed with joy. The floating leaf Mark IV was the most ideal battlesuit in her heart. It had all the characteristics she liked. In her opinion, the floating leaf Mark IV was obviously more worthy of her attention than the leg meat. "This floating leaf Mark IV was originally prepared for you. Now Grandpa is using it to exchange for your leg meat. It can be said that I'm going all out." Yi Cheng reached out and patted Yi Qingning's shoulder lightly. He said to Yi Qingning, "Go and try it out." "Okay." Yi Qingning agreed. She couldn't wait to pilot the floating leaf Mark IV and roam the sky. On the ground, Yi Cheng looked at Yi Qingning, who was familiarizing herself with the floating leaf Mark IV in the sky. He then looked down at the leg meat in his hand. A rare look of excitement flashed through his eyes. This piece of leg meat was actually not enough to satisfy Yi Cheng's needs. He wanted more. Starry Sky City was a city floating in the sky. It was where Starry Sky Academy was located. At the same time, it was also where Black Castle's headquarters was located. Zhou Lin and Duan Yusin, who had just returned from the carefree secret realm, had just taken the intercity train back to Starry Sky City. At the station, they saw Zhou Meng, who they hadn't seen in a long time. Zhou Meng smiled warmly and gave the 2 bouquets of flowers in his hand to Zhou Lin and Duan Yusin. "To be able to see the 2 of you come back safe and sound is really a very happy thing." Duan Yusin took the flowers from Zhou Meng and said with a smile, "Uncle, this time we had a great harvest in the carefree secret realm." "Yusin," Zhou Lin glanced at Duan Yusin. If you have anything to say it when we get back. Hearing this, Zhou Meng gave Zhou Lin a subtle look. Duan Yusin didn't notice anything and nodded with a smile. We won't go home first. Zhou Meng looked at Zhou Lin. I'll take the two of you to see an elder. Hearing Zhou Meng's words, Zhou Lin nodded and said, okay. Since Zhou Lin had agreed, Duan Yusin naturally didn't have any objections. The three of them sat in Zhou Meng's flying shuttle and flew towards the western district of Starry Sky City. The western district of Starry Sky City was a civilian area. Most of the people who lived here were ordinary people. Usually, Zhou Lin and Duan Yusin rarely came here, so they didn't know that there was an elder here that they had never seen before. Zhou Meng drove the flying shuttle and stopped in front of a nursing home. Looking at the dilapidated gate of the nursing home, he pursed his lips and said to Zhou Lin and Duan Yusin, "We're here. The elder is here." Zhou Lin and Duan Yusin walked down the flying shuttle and looked at the nursing home with curiosity. Who was the elder who lived here that made Zhou Meng act so strangely? Zhou Meng walked forward and opened the gate of the nursing home with his fingerprint. The three of them walked into the nursing home's reception hall, but they didn't see a single staff member. The entire reception hall was so quiet that they could hear each other's breathing clearly. Zhou Lin and Duan Yusin were not used to such an environment, but Zhou Meng was used to it. He walked inside and shouted as he walked, "Captain, I'm here to see you." When Zhou Lin heard Zhou Meng call her captain, she seemed to have thought of something and the expression on her face couldn't help but become subtle. Chapter 486. Captain, where are you? Zhou Meng shouted loudly as he walked inside. After passing through the reception hall and a long corridor, he finally found the person he was looking for in the garden. It was a silver-haired old man dressed in blue and white striped clothes. The old man was holding a kettle in his hand. He was bending over and carefully watering the flower bed. He looked meticulous, as if he didn't hear Zhou Meng's shouts at all. He was unmoved. When Zhou Meng saw this, he didn't go forward to disturb him. He just stood there quietly, patiently waiting for the old man to finish watering the flowers. Zhou Lin and Duan Yusin, who were walking behind Zhou Meng, couldn't help but look at each other. Neither of them spoke. After a while, when there wasn't a single drop of water left in the kettle, the old man finally stopped watering the flowers. He slowly straightened his body and looked at Zhou Meng. He said calmly, "I've already told you many times, don't call me captain anymore." "Captain." Zhou Meng smiled and still called him captain. "I brought 2 juniors from my family to visit you." Hearing this, the old man's gaze slowly shifted to Zhou Lin and Duan Yusin. After a moment of sizing them up, he said to Zhou Meng, "They're both good seedlings." Hearing the old man's words, Zhou Meng chuckled and said to the old man, "Captain, the 2 of them have just returned from the unfettered secret territory." The unfettered secret territory. A trace of nostalgia flashed in the old man's eyes. That's a very dangerous place. In the eyes of those who had never been to the unfettered mystery realm, the unfettered mystery realm was a blessed land, a good place full of opportunities. However, in the eyes of those who had really entered the unfettered mystery realm and experienced some things, the unfettered mystery realm was definitely an extremely dangerous place. The slightest carelessness could lead to death. The old man walked to a bench at the side and sat down. He said to Zhou Meng, "Why did you bring the 2 of them here today?" Zhou Meng walked to the old man's side and said, "Captain, a lot of things happened in the unfettered secret territory. Let the 2 of them tell you about it." Before meeting Zhou Lin, Zhou Meng had already learned about what happened in the carefree secret realm through He City's intelligence system. However, he didn't know much about the details. This time, he brought Zhou Lin here to tell the old man in detail about what happened in the carefree secret realm. At Zhou Meng's signal, Zhou Lin sat down in front of the old man and began to recount what had happened in the unfettered secret realm. When she mentioned that Zerg had arrived at the carefree secret realm through the teleportation channel, the old man's emotionless face finally showed some changes. Millions of years have passed. Has Zerg finally appeared again? The old man looked at Zhou Lin with a slightly complicated expression. You were able to walk out of the carefree secret realm alive under the threat of Zerg. Not bad. After the old man sighed with emotion, Zhou Lin continued her previous narration. When she mentioned what Qin Chuan had done, the old man's face changed again. He looked at Zhou Lin in surprise and asked, "Are you sure you remember correctly? That young man named Qin Chuan really defeated Zerg alone?" Zhou Lin nodded. "It's true." After getting a positive answer, the old man said with some relief, "A hero comes from a young man. Not bad, not bad. What else?" Obviously, the old man was now very interested in what happened in the carefree secret realm. He began to take the initiative to ask about what happened next. When he heard Zhou Lin say that Qin Chuan had entered the carefree house, the old man's face suddenly became very excited. He asked Zhou Lin, what did he get in the carefree house? Other than some elixirs, there was nothing else. The 3 treasures in the carefree house were all obtained by other people. I was lucky to get one. You got one too? This time, the person who spoke was Zhou Meng. He did not know that Zhou Lin had obtained a treasure, so he was very surprised. Zhou Lin nodded and said, "The treasure I got is called the Metal Origin. I don't know what it does." "So it's the Metal Origin." The old man seemed to know about the Metal Origin. He looked at Zhou Lin and said, "Little girl, your luck is not bad." Zhou Lin hurriedly asked, "Senior, you know about the Metal Origin?" The old man nodded and replied, "The Metal Origin is not a treasure, but a kind of natural origin. It may not be very useful in battle, but it is very beneficial to your future. As for the specific benefits, you will have to figure it out yourself." Zhou Lin thought for a moment and said to the old man, "Thank you for your guidance, Senior. All right, let's continue talking." This time, the old man did not interrupt Zhou Lin. He waited until Zhou Lin finished talking, then looked at Zhou Lin with a subtle gaze and said, "The young man called Qin Chuan is very talented and has great luck. To be able to obtain a consul's leg at this stage will be very beneficial to his future. However, high rewards are also accompanied by high risk. An ordinary man is innocent, but treasuring a jade ring will arouse the envy of others. This young man has obtained such an amazing treasure. If it is not handled properly, it may cause a disaster." Zhou Meng listened to the old man and asked, "Captain, what do you think of Qin Chuan?" The old man turned to look at Zhou Meng and said seriously, "If this young man doesn't die, he will have great achievements in 100 years. Zhou Meng looked at the old man deeply and said, "Captain, do you remember the call I gave you more than a year ago? I told you that I found a good seedling. That good seedling is Qin Chuan." Hearing Zhou Meng's words, the old man's eyes suddenly lit up, but soon dimmed again. He shook his head and said to Zhou Meng, "I'm old, I don't have such thoughts." "Captain, you're old but not old. I know you've always wanted to come out. Maybe this is your chance." Zhou Meng said seriously to the old man, "Lin Lin's leg meat from Qin Chuan can definitely help you change your body, cure your chronic disease, and return to the peak. Zhou Meng, that's your daughter's thing. It's not yours, and it's not mine." The old man shook his head again. "Don't say any more, I've made up my mind." Seeing the old man's firm attitude, Zhou Meng's face couldn't help but show a touch of sadness. At this moment, Zhou Lin suddenly said, "I remember that those who have made great contributions to Black City can ask for any reward from Black City. If you want to change your body and cure your chronic disease, I think heavenly pure water is more suitable." Zhou Meng smiled bitterly. "Heavenly pure water is rare in the world. Captain, what you need is not a small amount. We don't have so many merits to exchange with Black City." "You don't, but I do." Zhou Lin looked at Zhou Meng deeply. "I forgot to tell you that I also got the key to the unfettered secret territory." Chapter 487. On the airship, Qin Chuan stood in front of the window, looking at the elf city that was already faintly visible outside the window, and was slightly absent-minded. Just last night, he told Ningya about what happened between him and Yaorao, wanting to listen to Ningya's advice. But Ningya's advice was to let him do as he saw fit. This made Qin Chuan somewhat not know whether to laugh or cry. It was really the first time he met a teacher who didn't do the right thing after receiving benefit. "What are you thinking about?" Lu Zi slowly walked to Qin Chuan's side, looking at the elf city outside the window. She asked Qin Chuan, "We are going to return to school soon, you seem to be very emotional." Qin Chuan faintly smiled, then said to Lu Zi, "I am indeed very emotional. Since the ranking competition of the 6 great academies until today, I haven't returned to school for almost half a year. Your classmates miss you very much. You have always been number 001 in their hearts." Lu Zi smiled, then reached out her hand to comb her hair that had just been washed, and asked Qin Chuan, "What are your plans for the next few days? Maybe I don't have the final say on this. No one knows what kind of waves Zerg's reappearance will cause." Qin Chuan pursed his lips, then said to Lu Zi, "Maybe disaster will come again soon, and none of us will be spared. Actually, I have always been very curious about what the world outside our world is like." Lu Zi looked up at the sky. "Except for white clouds and blue sky, I can't see anything. What about you?" Qin Chuan also made an action of looking up, and said with emotion, "But sooner or later, we will be able to see everything." Lu Zi turned to look at Qin Chuan, the expression in her eyes subtle, and said softly, "In the past, I felt that your light was too dazzling, and maybe soon I wouldn't be able to continue following in your footsteps, and would be left far behind by you. But this time, in the carefree secret realm, I obtained the purple star divine pupil, and I am suddenly full of hope for the future. I think, maybe if I work a little harder, I will be able to walk a very long path with you." Qin Chuan heard these words, then turned to look at Lu Zi, and said with a complicated tone, "Actually, your life shouldn't just walk with me, you should also have your own color." Even now, Qin Chuan still remembered the first time he had met Lu Zi. At that time, Lu Zi was an extremely proud girl, beautiful and moving, and did not care about trifles. If they had not entered the Black Moon Combat Academy together, he felt that Lu Zi would definitely be a different person now that they met again. There is only one sun in the sky, and all the stars revolve around the sun. Are the other stars not dazzling aside from the sun? Lu Zi smiled, then said to Qin Chuan, "I have never thought of becoming a sun." Lu Zi's dream was actually very simple. She only hoped to become the star closest to the sun. She did not need to be dazzling, she just wanted to accompany the sun for a long time. "I can't win against you." Qin Chuan was helpless, and could only let Lu Zi do as she wished. When the flying ship slowly landed in the elf city, Ningya found Qin Chuan. She casually handed a piece of paper to Qin Chuan and said, "This is the person who contacted me on our way back to the academy. Everyone wants to make a deal with you. Can you guess what the deal is about?" Qin Chuan thought for a moment, then asked, "It should be related to the insect leg." In Qin Chuan's opinion, the only thing on his body that everyone coveted was the insect leg. "That's right, it's the insect leg." Ningya gently smiled, then said to Qin Chuan, "There's also something very interesting. The Qin family wants you to return to the family, and they have promised to give you the position of successor. In other words, when Qin Yiming retires, you can become the head of the Qin family." Hearing the Qin family's conditions, Qin Chuan could not help but be stunned. After a while, he said, "Their conditions should be for me to hand over the insect leg, right?" "That's right." Ningya nodded. "The Qin family's table manners are really too ugly. If the Qin family had taken out some substantial benefits to make a deal with Qin Chuan, Ningya would not have said anything. However, the Qin family wanted to gain something without risking anything. They wanted Qin Chuan to hand over the insect leg with the title of future successor that could be revoked at any time. They were simply treating Qin Chuan like a 3-year-old child. There was no sincerity at all. Also, Qin Ju left the Qin family again. It is said that before leaving, he had a big quarrel with Qin Yiming. I think she probably doesn't agree with Qin Yiming's way of doing things. Ningya looked at Qin Chuan and said with a smile, "Your aunt is still very partial to you. She has always been such a person who upholds her own principles and will not be easily swayed." Qin Chuan smiled. "This is also why I don't hate her. People born in aristocratic families would inevitably be infected with some bad habit. For example, for the sake of benefits, Qin Yiming could put down his old face and take the initiative to invite Qin Chuan to return to the Qin family. He even wanted to establish Qin Chuan as the future successor of the Qin family. He was really unscrupulous. You can rest assured and leave the insect leg with me first. I will definitely give you a big surprise in the future." Ningya reached out and patted Qin Chuan's shoulder gently. She said seriously, "In addition, after we go back this time, I plan to take you to see your advisor." "Advisor?" Qin Chuan was stunned. "The old dean? Who else can your advisor be other than the old dean?" Ningya smiled. "He is also my adoptive father. His name is Ning Zhongtian." Qin Chuan was very interested in the legendary old dean of the Black Moon Combat Academy. He asked Ningya, "Should I bring some gifts for our first meeting?" "That's not necessary." Ningya smiled. "There is no better gift than the leg meat." Hearing this, Qin Chuan nodded in understanding. The insect leg was precious, and it was probably an extremely rare treasure even for a nascent soul cultivator like the old principal. Using the leg meat as a first meeting gift to the old principal was indeed a very suitable choice. "I have already divided the leg meat. Apart from the 2 portions that Su Yuluo took, there are a total of 30 portions. I may need about 10 portions, and the old dean also needs about 10 portions. You can only use the remaining 10 portions. Ningya looked at Qin Chuan with a subtle expression and asked, "What do you think of my arrangement?" "I have no objections." Qin Chuan shrugged. "It's already good enough to have 10 portions. Hearing Qin Chuan's answer, Ningya's face lit up with an extremely happy smile. She said to Qin Chuan, "Teacher, I love your appearance as the child of wealth the most. You are so cute." Qin Chuan didn't know whether to laugh or cry. The child of wealth was too unpleasant to hear. Chapter 488. Walking on the Bluestone Road, Qin Chuan looked at the shops on both sides of the street, a trace of nostalgia flashing through his eyes. It had been a long time since he last walked on the streets of Azure Ancient City. Everything around him made him feel very comfortable and at ease. Ningya wore an elegant moon-white cheongsam. As she walked, she said to Qin Chuan, "When you see your grandmaster later, don't be nervous and don't be reserved. He's a very easy person to get along with." Qin Chuan nodded and asked Ningya, "Teacher, what's grandmaster's current cultivation level?" Nascent soul cultivators were also divided into different levels. Qin Chuan was very curious about the level of this legendary grandmaster. Ningya smiled proudly and replied, "Currently, our Star Dragon Federation has a total of 24 nascent soul cultivators. Your grandmaster can be ranked in the top 3. You've seen Qin Chongshao from the Qin family and Chen Xianfeng from the Profound Sky sect. These 2 people are also nascent soul cultivators, but even if they join forces, they might not be a match for your grandmaster." Hearing Ningya's words, Qin Chuan had a rough understanding of the old dean's strength. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that the old dean's strength had already touched the peak of this world. "Teacher, what's above the nascent soul stage?" Qin Chuan looked at Ningya curiously. "Have you seen anyone more powerful than the nascent soul stage? This matter is still too far away for the current you. There's no need to know too much about it." Ningya looked deeply at Qin Chuan and said, When you reach the nascent soul stage, you'll naturally know what's above it. As the teacher and disciple spoke, they arrived at the Black Moon Combat Academy's student union. It was currently a holiday, so there was no one in the student union. Ningya led Qinchuan all the way to the deepest part of the student union and arrived in front of a library. Looking at the library in front of him, Qinchuan was somewhat surprised. This was the first time he'd heard that there was such a library in the student union. Ningya took the lead and walked into the library. Qinchuan followed closely behind. The library was very big and quiet. There was no one reading. There was only a white-haired old man wearing glasses who was bent over the table and writing. Every stroke was extremely neat. Qinchuan saw the old man at first glance, and also realized that this old man might be the rumored old Dean Ning Zhongtian. He sized the old man up with a curious gaze, but did not find anything special. No matter how he looked at it, this was a very ordinary old man. Teacher. Ningya slowly walked in front of the old man and said, "I've brought my student to visit you." When the old man heard Ningya's words, he slowly put down the brush in his hand and raised his head to reveal a very benevolent face. He chuckled and said to Ningya, "So it's you, little girl. I didn't think that you'd become a teacher." As he spoke, Ning Zhongtian turned to look at Qinchuan. When he saw Qinchuan, his gaze paused for a moment before he lightly said, "I smell that old dragon's aura on you. It seems that you've gained quite a bit from him." When he heard Ning Zhongtian's words, Qinchuan's expression could not help but change. He never thought that Ning Zhongtian would be able to discover one of his greatest secrets with just one glance. A very special young man. Ning Zhongtian evaluated Qinchuan again before turning to Ningya and chuckling, "Your student hasn't learned anything from you, but he's met quite a few good teachers outside." Ningya looked at Qinchuan in surprise when she heard this. She then looked at Ning Zhongtian and asked, "Teacher, what have you discovered?" "I can't say." Ning Zhongtian smiled and shook his head. He extended a skinny finger and pointed at Qinchuan. "After all, this is your student's secret. It's not convenient for me to say." Seeing that Ning Zhongtian did not want to say anything, Ningya did not ask any further. She simply said to Ning Zhongtian, "Teacher, this time, your grand disciple has brought you a gift." As she spoke, Ningya took out a piece of thigh meat from her storage ring and placed it in front of Ning Zhongtian. She asked with a smile, "Teacher, what do you think of this gift?" Ning Zhongtian looked at the thigh meat in front of him and felt the shocking energy fluctuations emanating from it. He could not help but narrow his eyes and ask, "What happened outside?" "Not outside, in the unfettered secret realm." Ningya briefly told Ning Zhongtian what had happened in the unfettered secret realm. After listening to Ningya, Ning Zhongtian once again looked at Qinchuan and praised, "The younger generation will surpass us in time. This gift is extremely valuable. This old man should not have accepted it." Qinchuan chuckled and said to Ning Zhongtian, "Grandmaster, this is a token of my appreciation. Please accept it." "That's right, teacher. This is Qinchuan's token of appreciation. Moreover, Qinchuan has other things to ask of you." As she spoke, Ningya took out the hollowed-out insect leg and placed it on the floor of the library. She then said to Ning Zhongtian, "Teacher, the outer shell of this insect leg is definitely an excellent material for making battle armor. With your craftsmanship, you should be able to tailor a set of B-grade battle armor with superior performance for Qinchuan, right?" Ning Zhongtian took a deep look at the insect leg and nodded. "That's right. It is indeed an excellent material." Qinchuan, who was standing to the side, heard the conversation between Ningya and Ning Zhongtian. He could not help but be pleasantly surprised. He did not expect Ningya to bring him such a huge surprise. Ningya turned to Qinchuan and said to Qinchuan, "Qinchuan, I can tell you very responsibly that my teacher is definitely the best weapon refiner in the world. If he tailors a battle armor for you, You will definitely be able to do whatever you want in the golden elixir stage with this battle armor. Qin Chuan heard this and immediately said to Ning Zhongtian, "Thank you, Grandmaster." "No need to thank me." Ning Zhongtian smiled. "You gave me such a precious gift. It is only right that I tailor a battle armor for you. However, it will be difficult for you to use the outer shell of this insect leg to make a battle armor with your current level. You will need to be at least in the golden elixir stage." C-grade battle armor was suitable for cultivators in the foundation establishment stage. B-grade battle armor was suitable for cultivators in the golden elixir stage. The higher grade A-grade battle armor was tailor-made for cultivators in the nascent soul stage. It was extremely rare. The outer shell of this insect leg was actually enough to be used as an A-grade battle armor material. However, if it was used to make B-grade battle armor, it would definitely be able to create the strongest battle armor among B-grade battle armors. I will definitely work hard to cultivate. In order to be able to control his own battle armor as soon as possible, Qin Chuan decided to work hard in the coming days to pass the Dan tribulation and reach the golden elixir stage as soon as possible. "Oh right, teacher, I think Qin Chuan is now qualified to become a candidate for heir of Kunlun," Ningya suddenly said to Ning Zhongtian. "I hope that teacher can write a recommendation letter for Qin Chuan." Chapter 489. This was the second time Qin Chuan had heard someone talk about the preparation of an heir. He looked at Ning Zhongtian curiously, thinking about the recommendation letter. Ning Zhongtian heard Ningya's request but did not agree immediately. He looked at Qin Chuan and studied Qin Chuan seriously. Then, he said to Qin Chuan, "With your luck and ability, you have the right to become a preparation of an heir. However, becoming a preparation of an heir may not be a good thing." Hearing Ning Zhongtian's words, Qin Chuan asked curiously, "What does a preparation of an heir need to do?" "You need to work hard to cultivate and improve your ability," Ning Zhongtian answered calmly. "The stage for preparation of an heir is not in this world. Although the outside world is full of opportunities, it is also full of danger." Hearing this, Qin Chuan couldn't help but look at Ningya hesitantly. He wasn't particularly interested in becoming a reserve heir of Kunlun's field. Facing Qin Chuan's gaze, Ningya pursed her lips and said, "Qin Chuan, do you remember what I told you before? It's about the cause of your parents' death. If you cannot become a preparation of an heir, then you will never have the right to know the truth." Hearing Ningya's words, Qin Chuan's eyes narrowed. He did not think that becoming a preparation of an heir would be related to his father's death. "I am willing to become a preparation of an heir." Without any consideration, Qin Chuan made his decision without hesitation. Ning Zhongtian looked at Qin Chuan and said calmly, "Once you make a decision, you will not have the chance to regret it in the future." "I will not regret it." Qin Chuan's tone was resolute. This concerned the cause of his parents' death. He could not back down, nor could he regret it. Ning Zhongtian looked at Qin Chuan meaningfully. After a moment of silence, he said, "If that's the case, then I promise to write you a letter of recommendation. With this letter, you can become a reserve heir of Kunlun." Qin Chuan immediately said to Ning Zhongtian, "Thank you, Grand Master." The gift had been delivered, the surprise had been received, and the recommendation letter had been obtained. Ningya left the library with Qin Chuan and walked back to school. Along the way, Ningya was silent and so was Qin Chuan. Neither of them spoke until they reached the school gate. Then, Ningya stopped and looked at Qin Chuan, who had been waiting impatiently for a long time. "What I can tell you now is that the person back then was also a preparatory heir of Kunlun's field. I don't know how far he has progressed. His surname is Shangguan, and his name is Yuan Hao." Hearing Ningya's words, Qin Chuan was silent for a moment and asked, "What happened back then?" Ningya sighed faintly and shook her head. "I don't know what happened back then. You need to investigate the truth yourself." "I understand." Qin Chuan looked deeply at Ningya. Thank you, master. You don't have to thank me. You should thank yourself. If it weren't for your amazing performance, I wouldn't have let you know about these things. Ningya said to Qin Chuan in a complicated tone. Don't be impulsive. With your strength, you will get your revenge sooner or later. Don't be impatient. Do you understand? Qin Chuan nodded. I know. I know what to do. All right, go back and rest. You can make your own arrangements for the rest of the time. Ningya handed Qin Chuan a chip. There are 2 rune arrays in here. Study them well. Qin Chuan stood where he was and watched Ningya's figure disappear into the darkness. He held the chip tightly in his hand and murmured, Shangguan Yuanhao, according to the normal procedure, if Qin Chuan wanted to become a reserve heir of Kunlun's field, he would have to go through a test. However, because he had received a recommendation letter from Ning Zhongtian, Qin Chuan could become a reserve heir of Kunlun's field without the test. This way, Qin Chuan had a lot of time to spare. After learning that the registration time for reserve heir of Kunlun's field was 3 months later, Qin Chuan decided to go to the demon realm. If he wanted to go there, he needed someone's help. After saying goodbye to his friends, Qin Chuan returned to the City of Elves and took the intercity train to Dongshan City. 2 days later, he saw Wang Bo and Wang Bo's girlfriend, Wei Zixin, whom he hadn't seen in months. Seeing Wang Bo and Wei Zixin snuggling up to each other sweetly, Qin Chuan didn't know whether to laugh or cry. I really came all the way here. I didn't expect to be stuffed with dog food before I even had a chance to eat. Wang Bo chuckled and said to Qin Chuan proudly, Little Chuan, you may be ahead of me in other aspects, but when it comes to finding a girlfriend, I'm ahead of you. You have to hurry up. Don't be single when we have children. Although Wei Zixin had seen Qin Chuan before, they didn't have much of a relationship at that time, so they didn't greet each other. Now that she was Wang Bo's girlfriend, of course she had to get to know Qin Chuan. Hello, I'm Wei Zixin, a local from Dongshan. Wei Zixin looked at Qin Chuan and smiled. Wang Bo often tells me about you. I know you're very powerful. Not that powerful. Qin Chuan chuckled and said to Wei Zixin, Wang Bo is usually careless. You have to take care of him. The 3 of them chatted and ate. When the atmosphere was lively, a tall man suddenly walked in from outside the restaurant and sat down next to Qin Chuan. He reached out and hooked Qin Chuan's neck, saying loudly, Brat, I heard you got a lot of benefits in the carefree secret realm? Qin Chuan looked at the man sitting next to him and grinned. Big cousin, how did you know I was here? What don't your big cousin know? The man laughed. I smelled your scent before you even entered the city. The man Qin Chuan called Big Cousin was none other than the Lion Duke. Qin Chuan came to Dongshan City this time to visit Wang Bo. His main purpose was to find the Lion Duke. Wang Bo looked at Qin Chuan and the Lion Duke, who had their arms around each other's shoulders. He couldn't help but feel puzzled. He had known Qin Chuan for so many years, but he had never heard of Qin Chuan having such a big cousin. He couldn't help but ask curiously, Qin Chuan, who is this? Let me introduce you. This is Shi Shuai, my big cousin. He's a distant relative. You've never seen him before. Qin Chuan chuckled and introduced the Lion Duke's identity to Wang Bo. Although he trusted Wang Bo, the Lion tribe had just fought a war with Dongshan City not long ago. Although that war had nothing to do with the Lion Duke, it was better not to let Wang Bo know about his identity. That's right, I'm his big cousin. The Lion Duke looked at Wang Bo with a smile. You can call me big cousin from now on. You don't have to be polite with me. Chapter 490. Just as Wang Bo was about to greet Lion Duke, the optical computer on his wrist suddenly flashed. He immediately turned it on and looked at Qin Chuan. Then, he said apologetically, Qin Chuan, the army is calling me back. I can't accompany you. Me too. Wei Zixin looked at her optical computer and said to Qin Chuan, It looks like there's a very urgent task to be issued. It's okay. You don't have to worry about me. Qin Chuan immediately said, You guys go do your business. We'll talk again when there's time. Wang Bo and Wei Zixin said goodbye to Lion Duke, then hurriedly got up and ran out of the restaurant. Looking at the two leaving figures, Qin Chuan gently shook his head and said to Lion Duke, Fortunately, both of them are military doctors. If they were in different departments, I'm afraid it would be difficult to see them. Young people nowadays are looking for a partner. Aren't they looking for a common topic? Lion Duke laughed and reached out to grab the lamb chop on the table and took a big bite. His mouth was full of oil. Qin Chuan looked at Lion Duke eating and drinking and asked with a smile, Big cousin, can you send me to the monster realm? Hearing Qin Chuan's words, Lion Duke stopped eating the lamb chop, then looked at Qin Chuan with a puzzled look and asked, You want to go to the monster realm? What are you going to do there? Qin Chuan thought for a moment and decided to tell the truth. I met a monster realm friend in the carefree secret realm. She invited me to Mount Tianyao as a guest. Before Qin Chuan could finish his words, Lion Duke interrupted him with a surprised look. Mount Tianyao? Who invited you to Mount Tianyao? Her name is Yaorao. The monster realm calls her Princess Yaorao. Qin Chuan asked Lion Duke with a little curiosity, Big cousin, do you know Yaorao? I was wondering who it was. Turned out to be that little girl. Lion Duke chuckled. If she really did invite you to Mount Tianyao, then it might be true. But then again, how did you two meet? It's a long story. Qin Chuan gave a wry smile and said to Lion Duke, In short, I need to go to Mount Tianyao within the next 6 months. I don't know how to enter the monster realm, so I can only rely on you. A look of contemplation appeared on Lion Duke's face. He thought for a moment, then said to Qin Chuan, I can only tell you how to enter the demon realm, but I won't accompany you. To be honest, I have no intention of ever returning to the demon realm. Hearing Lion King's answer, Qin Chuan looked at Lion King and said, Big cousin, what if I offer you something that will make you happy? What if I hire you to accompany me into the demon world, or even Mount Tianyao? Are you kidding me? Lion Duke looked at Qin Chuan with a playful expression. I don't think you have anything that will make me happy. Qin Chuan wasn't in a hurry to explain. He got up and paid the bill, then took Lion Duke to the room upstairs. Lion Duke followed behind Qin Chuan. Looking at Qin Chuan's confident look, he couldn't help but wonder if Qin Chuan really had something good in his hands. It was a pity that Lion Duke didn't know much about what happened in the carefree secret realm. Otherwise, he wouldn't have such doubts now. After entering the room, Qin Chuan didn't say much nonsense. He simply took out a piece of thigh meat and placed it in front of Lion Duke. Big cousin, what do you think of this? Lion Duke looked at the thigh meat in front of him in shock. After a while, he suddenly looked up at Qin Chuan and asked, Where did you get this? Qin Chuan laughed when he heard this. He reached out and pushed the thigh meat to Lion Duke, then answered his question. Naturally, I got it from the carefree secret realm. Didn't you just say that you heard that I got a lot of benefits from the carefree secret realm? This is one of those benefits. Lion Duke stared straight at Qin Chuan and asked, Are you sure you want to give this to me? It's not for you. It's for you to protect me in the demon world. Qin Chuan smiled and asked, What do you think? Yes. Lion Duke agreed and asked, How much of this do you have? This thing is so precious. I don't have much. But if you need it urgently, I can still give you some. Qin Chuan had long expected that Lion Duke would never be satisfied with just a piece of worm thigh meat. He would definitely want more. He didn't mind giving Lion Duke a few more pieces of worm thigh meat. Anyway, he didn't need it at this stage. It was better to use it in exchange for some favors. Hearing Qin Chuan's words, Lion Duke took a deep look at Qin Chuan and said, I do want more of this thing, but I won't take advantage of you. This trip to the demon world will be a gift. If you give me this, I can help you do one thing. Even if you are besieged by 10 Yuanying stage cultivators, I will save you from the sea of suffering. You mean, this thing can be exchanged for your help unconditionally? That's right. Lion Duke said without hesitation, 1 for 1. Deal. Qin Chuan was overjoyed. In addition to the previous piece of thigh meat, he took out 2 more pieces of thigh meat and placed them in front of Lion Duke. Big cousin, I want 3 chances for you to help me. Lion Duke waved his sleeve and took the 3 pieces of thigh meat. Then he looked at Qin Chuan meaningfully and said, Deal. After completing the transaction, Lion Duke smiled and said to Qin Chuan, You just put a treasure in front of me like this, and even exposed that you have more treasures. Aren't you afraid that I will be greedy and kill you directly? Qin Chuan smiled when he heard this. If you really do that, then it means that I've misjudged you. I won't die in vain. I am not a human, I am a demon. Lion Duke laughed and said very happily, How many years has it been? You are the first person to trust me so much. Lion Duke rose in his youth. From the time he became a demon general, there was no family or friendship around him. Everywhere he went, there was only interest. There was no sentiment to speak of. Growing up in such an environment, Lion Duke's temperament was greatly affected. He never trusted anyone easily. He could get along well with Qin Chuan because he was confident in his strength. In the face of absolute strength, no matter what tricks Qin Chuan wanted to play, it would be useless. But what he didn't expect was that Qin Chuan didn't have any intention of playing tricks with him. Instead, he was surprisingly honest. Trust is mutual. Qin Chuan smiled slightly. If Big Cousin didn't trust me, you wouldn't have appeared in front of me again and again. Although we are of different races, I have always regarded you as a friend. Chapter 491. The spirit realm is in the east, and the human realm is in the west. There is a mountain between the human realm and the spirit realm. You just have to cross the mountain to reach the spirit realm. The spirit realm is not a single mountain. It is made up of many mountains. These mountains are called the spirit realm. There are also some aborigines in Jie Mountain, both humans and demons, but they are different from us. They get along very well. When there is a chance, I will take you to the city of your aborigines to take a look. You will definitely be surprised. On the way to the spirit realm, Lion Lord kept telling Qin Chuan about the spirit realm. Qin Chuan listened very carefully. If it wasn't for Lion Lord, he wouldn't have known the spirit realm was not a single mountain. He wouldn't have known there were natives in the spirit realm. Everything about the spirit realm was very strange to Qin Chuan. The closer they got to the spirit realm, the more barren the land became. There was not even a small animal to be seen. Qin Chuan was very curious about this, so he asked Lion Lord, Why is there not a single person here? Are you really a human? You don't know that? Lion Lord looked at Qin Chuan with suspicion. The spirit realm is dangerous everywhere. There are no resources here. Who would want to live in a place like this? When Qin Chuan heard this, he scratched his head awkwardly and said, I'm ignorant. You young people should come out more often. You should see how big the world is. You won't be able to achieve anything if you just practice. I admire you for that. If it were someone else, they wouldn't have the courage to go to the spirit realm. Lion Lord wasn't deliberately praising Qin Chuan. He really thought Qin Chuan was a very good young man. He was mature, brave, and talented. He was very good in all aspects. There was nothing wrong with him. If the reason why he took Qin Chuan away from the Elf City was because he wanted to use Qin Chuan to meet the Azure Dragon Song Hao, then the reason why he interacted with Qin Chuan after that was because he admired Qin Chuan. If it wasn't for the fact that Qin Chuan was a human, Lion Duke would have already accepted Qin Chuan as his disciple. One must know that with his status, if he were to openly accept a disciple in the demon realm, the queue would stretch from Mount Tianyao to Star Dragon City. As night fell, Lion Duke and Qin Chuan finally arrived at the edge of World Mountain. Above the clouds, Qin Chuan looked down at World Mountain and couldn't help but exclaim. The vastness and magnificence of World Mountain had completely exceeded his expectations. Did you see that? Beneath the vast sea of clouds are all World Mountains. Lion Duke laughed and said to Qin Chuan, when I first saw World Mountain, my reaction was similar to yours. I was deeply shocked by the beauty of World Mountain. After admiring the scenery of World Mountain, Qin Chuan asked with some doubts, I heard that World Mountain is where the war between the humans and the demon race happened. Why does it look so peaceful? There are often wars between the humans and the demon race in World Mountain, but they are all in remote areas. They are not in the bustling areas of World Mountain. If anyone dares to start a war in the center of World Mountain, they will be resisted by all the natives of World Mountain. This is a situation that neither the demon race nor the humans want to see. The place I brought you to is the center of World Mountain, so what you see in your eyes is only the beautiful scenery. There is no smoke of war. I see. Qin Chuan suddenly realized. He thought that there was a war burning everywhere in World Mountain, but now it seemed that he thought too much. Speaking of war, Qin Chuan suddenly asked Lion Duke, Big cousin, what do you think of war? Lion Duke chuckled and said to Qin Chuan, when I was young, I thought war was for the sake of the demon realm, for the rise of the demon race. Later, I found out that war was just to satisfy some of the needs of the upper class. The so-called righteousness was nothing more than a high-sounding reason. Hearing Lion Duke's words, Qin Chuan's heart was touched. Although he did not have much contact with war, he really hated it. We are old and we have no chance to end the war. But you are still young. The future of the world is up to you young people. If you want to make some changes to this world, then do it boldly. Lion Duke reached out and patted Qin Chuan's shoulder. He laughed and said, I believe in you. After a short chat, Lion Duke took Qin Chuan to the nearest native city in World Mountain. Along the way, Qin Chuan saw some humans and demon race. Some were alone and some were in groups. The humans and demon race were getting along very well. We are here. Lion Duke reached out and pointed to a stone city in front of them. He said to Qin Chuan, such a simple building is rare outside. Qin Chuan looked at the stone city that Lion Duke was pointing at. His eyes flashed with surprise. The city was built by hollowing out the mountain. It was one. This is the famous mountain city in World Mountain. When the city was designed and built, there was no need to use other objects at all. It was purely carved out of the mountain. Lion Duke looked at the mountain city and said to Qin Chuan, the mountain city has been built for more than 3,000 years. There was a battle outside the city. It almost destroyed the mountain city. Suddenly, a big hand fell from the sky and directly killed the two people in the battle. It shocked the world. Since then, no one dared to fight outside the mountain city. Qin Chuan heard this and looked at Lion Duke with some surprise. He asked, is the person who did it a nascent soul cultivator? It should be. I have never seen him. Lion Duke thought for a moment and said, but even if he was a nascent soul cultivator, he should have died of old age after 3,000 years. While they were talking, Lion Duke brought Qin Chuan to the gate of the mountain city. The mountain city was free to enter and exit, but they had to register in front of the gate. Nascent soul cultivators and demon kings did not have to follow the rules, but Lion Duke did not want to expose his identity. So, he and Qin Chuan registered together, using the name Shi Shui. After the registration, Qin Chuan asked Lion Duke, Big cousin, is this registration really useful? I think some people are using masks. Lion Duke laughed and said to Qin Chuan, it doesn't matter if they are using masks or not. These people won't dare to cause trouble in the city. This registration is just a formality. Qin Chuan nodded, but he didn't really understand. He didn't think about it anymore. He turned his attention to the special buildings of the mountain city. This was the second time Qin Chuan had come to such a special city. The last time he saw it was when he went to the Black Moon Combat Academy to report to the city of Elv. Let's go. I will take you to see the special features of the mountain city. Lion Duke laughed and pulled Qin Chuan to the largest building in the city. Chapter 492. Buy a ticket, buy a ticket. Lion Baron took out 2 low-grade spirit stones and threw them to the guard at the door. He then reached out and took 2 plates from the table and handed one to Qin Chuan. Qin Chuan looked at the plate with the number 60,220 written on it and asked Lion Baron curiously, "Big cousin, what is this?" "This is my seat number. I am 60221. Lion Baron waved the plate at Qin Chuan and said with a smile, "Coming to the mountain city, if I don't come here to have a look, then I would have come in vain." After listening to Lion Baron for a long time, Qin Chuan still didn't know where he was. But when he followed Lion Baron into the hall, he heard the cheers and saw the huge ring. He seemed to know where he was. The arena. Looking at the audience who were shouting crazily, looking at the 2 warriors who were roaring and fighting in the ring, Qin Chuan felt his blood boiling at this moment. He was eager to vent it out. When Lion Baron saw Qin Chuan's face turn slightly red, he couldn't help but laugh. He reached out and patted Qin Chuan's shoulder and said, "How is it? Do you feel the charm of the arena?" Without waiting for Qin Chuan to answer, Lion Baron pulled Qin Chuan to their seat. After sitting down, Qin Chuan looked at the audience who were shouting excitedly. He couldn't help but stand up and look at the ring. At this time, the 2 warriors in the ring were having a final struggle. The battle was very fierce and quite tragic. The feeling that made people's blood boil was definitely not something that the 6 Great Academies ranking competition could compare with. Seeing Qin Chuan's performance, Lion Baron laughed and said to Qin Chuan, "This is the most lively place in the mountain city. Every day, hundreds of warriors fight here to win the final high prize. The intensity is definitely not comparable to those small competitions you have participated in before." Qin Chuan nodded vigorously and said, "When I first entered the door, I was already infected by the atmosphere of the scene. My blood was boiling." "Boiling is right." Lion Baron looked at Qin Chuan deeply and asked, "Are you interested in going down and giving it a try?" Qin Chuan looked at Lion Baron with some surprise and asked, "Me?" "Yes." Lion Baron nodded and said, "Kid, before you entered the carefree secret realm, you were only in the middle stage of the foundation establishment stage. But now, you are almost in the foundation establishment stage. In just 2 months your realm has improved so quickly. Don't tell me that your foundation is not stable at all?" Hearing Lion Baron's words, the expression on Qin Chuan's face couldn't help but become a little serious. Indeed, as Lion Baron said, because his realm had improved too quickly during this period, his foundation was indeed showing signs of instability. If he couldn't consolidate his foundation in time, it might have a certain impact on his future cultivation. If you want to consolidate your foundation, there is nothing faster and better than actual combat. Ordinary practice may not be effective, but a life-and-death battle in the ring will definitely be effective. Lion Baron looked at Qin Chuan with encouraging eyes and asked again, "The ring is right there. Don't you want to go up and try your skills?" Qin Chuan's eyes lit up when he heard this. He looked at Lion Duke and said excitedly, "Yes." In the arena hall. "Sir, this is our registration form," Wang Yao said. The fox girl in a suit handed a form to Qin Chuan and said to Qin Chuan in a very respectful tone, "As long as you fill in this form, you can line up to participate in the duel in our arena." Qin Chuan reached out and took the form from the fox girl. Before he had time to see what was written on the form, Lion Baron reached out and took the form away. He tore it up and said to the fox girl, "We don't want this kind of ordinary cousin. He wants to participate in the challenge, 1 against 1,000. When the fox girl heard Lion Baron's words, her gentle face couldn't help but show a touch of shock. She said involuntarily, 1 against 1,000? Are you sure? While she was talking, the fox girl looked at Qin Chuan. She couldn't believe Qin Chuan would choose such a difficult challenge. Qin Chuan didn't know much about ordinary duels or challenges, but if Lion Baron said so, he wasn't going to refuse. He looked at the fox girl in disbelief and smiled. He nodded and said, "Yes, I want to participate in the challenge. 1 against 1,000. The fox girl heard this and immediately said to Qin Chuan, "Please wait a moment. I need the manager to register you." Qin Chuan watched the fox girl leave. Then, he turned to look at Lion Duke and asked curiously, "What do you mean by 1 against 1,000? Lion Baron laughed and asked, "You don't even know what 1 against 1,000 means, and you just agreed? Aren't you afraid I'll cheat you?" Qin Chuan grinned and said, "I can guess a little. I think I have the strength to do so." "Good boy. You have guts." Lion Baron laughed proudly. "I didn't misjudge you." While Lion Duke was laughing, Little Fox led a Minotaur over. The Minotaur looked at Qin Chuan and Lion Duke, and his eyes fell on Lion Duke. He asked respectfully, "Mister, are you the ones who want to participate in the 1 versus 1,000 challenge?" "It's him, not me." Lion Baron pushed Qin Chuan and said to the Minotaur, "Don't ask too many questions. Just register and arrange the time. By the way, explain the rules to him." When the Tauren heard this, he couldn't help but look at Qin Chuan strangely. He didn't even know the rules of the competition and wanted to participate in a 1 versus 1 challenge. Wasn't he being too hasty? "Mister, the 1 against 1,000 challenge is divided into 7 rounds. They are 1 against 1, 1 against 5, 1 against 10, 1 against 50, 1 against 100, 1 against 500, and 1 against 1,000. In the first 3 matches, you are not allowed to withdraw or surrender. You either win or die. As long as you survive the first 3 matches, you are allowed to withdraw or surrender in the following matches. If you choose to withdraw, you will only get the rewards for winning the first 3 matches. If you surrender in the next match, all the rewards will be taken away. That's about the rules." After hearing the Minotaur's explanation, Qin Chuan nodded and asked, "So, what is the strength of my opponent?" The Minotaur immediately replied, "In the first 3 rounds, your opponent's realm will be the same as yours. In the following rounds, your opponent's realm will not be lower than yours by 2 realms." Qin Chuan understood, and he nodded again. "I have no more questions. Please help me register. I want to participate in the 1 against 1,000 challenge." Chapter 493. The Tauren saw that Qin Chuan was serious, and it didn't seem like he was joking. So, he asked again, "Mister, if you sign up but don't participate in the challenge, you will be blacklisted and put on the wanted list. Are you sure you want to sign up?" This was the final confirmation the Tauren gave to Qin Chuan. He didn't want to wait until the news was out, only to find that he was nowhere to be found. Qin Chuan nodded again and said to the Tauren, "I am sure I will participate in the challenge." The Tauren saw that Qin Chuan wasn't backing down, so he respectfully said to Qin Chuan and Lion Duke, "Please come with me." Half an hour later, Qin Chuan and Lion Duke walked out of the manager's office. Lion Duke looked at Qin Chuan and asked, "How is it? Do you feel a lot of pressure?" Qin Chuan laughed and said to Lion Duke, "If you want to talk about pressure, let's wait until the 4th round. I don't think the first 3 rounds will be enough to pressure me." "You are quite confident, aren't you?" Lion Duke smiled and said to Qin Chuan, "The challenge will take place in 3 days. We will spend the next few days in Mountain City. If you need anything, just tell me. I will try my best to satisfy you." Qin Chuan thought about it seriously, then said to Lion Duke, "Big cousin, I want a good sword." When he heard Qin Chuan, Lion Duke laughed and said, "I thought you were going to ask me something. Isn't it just a sword?" Let's go to the biggest treasure house in Mountain City. You can buy whatever you like. Big cousin will treat you. When Qin Chuan heard this, he immediately smiled and said, Then I'll thank Big Cousin in advance. Don't worry, I definitely won't let you down in this challenge. On this day, the arena in Mountain City suddenly released the news to the entire Jia Mountain. After almost 100 years, the arena once again challenged 1,000 people. Once this news spread, it caused a sensation in Mountain City and half of Jia Mountain. Although the arena was filled with people, most of the matches were 1-on-1 or 2-on-2. There were very few matches that could give people a sense of novelty. The audience had already developed aesthetic fatigue. The appearance of the 1-against-1,000 challenge could be said to have lit up the eyes of the audience. They were full of interest in this upcoming challenge. When news of Qin Chuan's identity spread, it attracted the attention of countless people. Qin Chuan, 19 years old, late foundation establishment stage. Exact combat strength unknown. Prospective second-year student of the Black Moon Combat Academy, MVP of the Star Dragon Federation's 6 Great Academies ranking tournament. He entered the carefree secret realm not long ago and recently returned to the human world. In the living room, a graceful young woman wearing a long black dress was sitting on the sofa. Her eyes were lazily looking at the information in her hands. Her charming face revealed some anticipation. Our mountain city hasn't had such a young and promising handsome youth for many years. This Qin Chuan looks pretty good. I'm very interested in him. The black-clothed butler standing to the side immediately asked respectfully, Madam, do you need me to bring him to see you? That won't be necessary. The young woman gently shook her head. As for meeting him, let's wait until he passes the first 3 stages. At this point, the young woman paused for a moment. Then, she said to the butler, Go and tell old Nyo in the arena to arrange for Shiyu to fight in the first match. Hearing the young woman's arrangement, the butler was slightly surprised. However, he didn't ask any questions and only respectfully agreed. The butler accepted the order and left. The young woman slowly sat up and took Qin Chuan's picture in her hands again. She carefully looked at it again and muttered in a low voice, Similar, really too similar. Tianyao Mountain. Wearing a red dress, Yaorao was sitting cross-legged on the edge of the cliff. Her gaze was looking towards the west. Her exquisite face was filled with boredom. Behind the young woman, a white Pegasus descended from the sky and landed beside the young woman. It changed into a tall figure and said to the young woman with a smile, Just now I heard a news, do you want to hear it? Don't want to hear it. Yaorao was bored to death. I want to be alone. Oh, that's really a pity. I heard that in Mountain City's arena of Jia Mountain City, a rarely seen 1-against-1,000 challenge has appeared. Don't you want to go and see it? I have already bought the ticket. Ma Jiawen, if you want to go then go by yourself. If you want someone to accompany you go find someone else. This empress has no time. Ah? So it's like this, then I can only go by myself to cheer for Qin Chuan. Finished speaking, Ma Jiawen was ready to turn around and leave. But Yaorao suddenly reached out and grabbed her skirt. Who did you say just now? Qin Chuan? What happened to him? Ma Jiawen innocently said, Did I mention Qin Chuan just now? Princess Yaorao, did you mishear? Having heard what was said, Yaorao immediately said, I heard it clearly. You said you want to go and cheer for Qin Chuan. Seeing Yaorao was anxious, Ma Jiawen immediately said with a smile, Yes, Qin Chuan went to Mountain City of Jia Mountain to participate in 1-against-1,000 challenge. As a friend, I want to go and cheer for him. Is there any problem? He actually went to Jia Mountain? I also want to go. Yaorao said to Ma Jiawen, Give me the tickets. Ma Jiawen handed over the tickets to Yaorao with a smile and said, I heard the news is already today. Let's set out as soon as possible. His challenge will begin in 1 day. Let's go. Without demur, Yaorao turned around and walked towards outside. While walking, she gnashed her teeth and said, "That guy actually has the mood to go to Jia Mountain to participate in some challenge. Could it be that he forgot about the matter of coming to Tianyao Mountain as a guest?" Looking at the angry appearance of Yaorao, Ma Jiawen said with a smile, "But at that time, Princess gave you half a year's time. And he has only left Xiaoyao's secret realm for a few days." Having heard what was said, Yaorao immediately turned to look at Ma Jiawen and asked, "Are you speaking for him?" "I was wrong." Ma Jiawen very straightforwardly admitted her mistake. She didn't want to be reprimanded by Yaorao. In the palace on the summit, a tall and straight figure wearing a golden robe was standing in front of the steps. Looking at the figure of Yaorao and Ma Jiawen, who were descending the mountain, his deep eyes couldn't help but reveal a touch of complex expression. It seemed he didn't want Yaorao to go to Jia Mountain. "Your Majesty." A beautiful woman whose appearance was somewhat similar to Yaorao slowly walked over and stood side by side with Demon Emperor. She looked at the departing figure of Yaorao and said in a low voice, "Rao going to Jia Mountain this time, Your Majesty doesn't plan to stop her? The things that Rao wanted to do in these past few years, how many things can we stop?" Demon Emperor faintly sighed. "Let her be." Having heard what was said, Demon Empress turned to look at Demon Emperor with complex expression and asked, "If Rao is injured because of this, what should we do?" "Kill." Demon Emperor said without the slightest hesitation, "I will kill whoever makes Rao injured." Chapter 494. As the news of the 1-against-1,000 challenge spread, the mountain city had attracted a lot of people in just 2 days. It had become much livelier than before. The arena, which was only half full, was now filled to the brim. Every arena was filled to the brim. The reason why this happened had little to do with Qin Chuan, who was the protagonist of the challenge. Most of the audience came for Shi Yu, who was going to fight in the first battle. For people outside the World Mountain, Shi Yu's name might be unfamiliar. But in the World Mountain, Shi Yu's name represented the ceiling of the Foundation establishment stage. People first learned about Shi Yu in the Mountain City's arena. At that time, Shi Yu was only 18 years old, but he had already gone through hundreds of battles in the arena. His winning rate had reached an astonishing 100%. The reason for such an exaggerated winning rate was that Shi Yu would repeatedly challenge the opponents who defeated him until he defeated everyone. At that time, as long as Shi Yu appeared in a battle, the arena would be overcrowded. In 10 years, the audience witnessed how Shi Yu went from being invincible in the Qi refining stage to being invincible in the Foundation establishment stage. Today, when the word invincible was mentioned, the first thing that came to people's minds was Shi Yu. After becoming invincible in the Foundation establishment stage, Shi Yu left the arena and did not appear in the arena for 3 years. This also made Shi Yu's name become a legend, a story, and a regret for the audience who wanted to see Shi Yu become invincible in the Gold Core stage. Just when everyone thought that Shi Yu would never appear in the arena again, Shi Yu once again appeared in front of the public in a very special way. In the 1-against-1,000 challenge, Shi Yu would fight against Qin Chuan in the first one-on-one battle. No one thought that this time, Shi Yu would appear in the 1-against-1,000 challenge. After all, Shi Yu was one of the few people who could win the 4th round in the 1-against-1,000 challenge. No one thought that Shi Yu would suddenly appear at this time. Qin Chuan did not expect it at all. He thought that his opponent in the first round was at most a Foundation establishment stage cultivator or a top goblin general. Who would have thought that it would be a monster like Shi Yu? Qin Chuan looked at the video of Shi Yu's fight. He couldn't help but sigh. This Shi Yu. I can only use one word to describe him. It's pleasing to the eye. Lion Duke, who was eating meat, smiled and said to Qin Chuan, "Shi Yu is a genius. I haven't seen him before, but I've heard of him. I thought he was already in the Gold Core stage, but I didn't expect him to still be in the Foundation establishment stage. You've met your match this time, so be careful." Qin Chuan curiously asked Lion Baron, "What kind of person is he?" Leo Duke thought for a moment and said, "No talent, but hard work. No background, but his heart is higher than the sky." Hearing Lion Duke's evaluation of Shiyu's position in Qin Chuan's heart couldn't help but rise. If he was just playing around in the first 3 rounds, then he was now ready to go all out. This was only the first level, and he had already encountered such an abnormal opponent like Shiyu. Wouldn't his opponents be even stronger in the second and third levels? Looking at Qin Chuan's dignified expression, Lion Duke smiled and comforted him. "Don't feel pressure. As long as you work hard and exert your full strength, you may not lose." Qin Chuan smiled bitterly and said, "I thought you would say that I'll win." Lion Duke laughed and said to Qin Chuan, "If your opponent is someone else, then I'll have a lot of confidence in you. But your opponent is Shiyu. He's a legend in the Foundation establishment stage." A legend in the Foundation establishment stage. When he thought of facing such a character, Qin Chuan found that he didn't feel any fear in his heart. Instead, he felt a little excited. "Manager, all the tickets for the day of the competition have been sold out, and all the member boxes have been reserved." The fox girl, who once received Qin Chuan and Lion Duke, respectfully looked at the Tauren sitting in front of her and reported the ticket situation in a low voice. When the Tauren heard the report, he asked, "Is Qin Chuan still in the hotel?" "Yes, the people we sent have been watching him. He eats in the hotel's restaurant every day." The fox girl replied, "From the current situation, he doesn't seem to have any intention of escaping." "That's good." The Tauren breathed a sigh of relief. "If this kid runs away, Shiyu will definitely not show up. At that time, we will be in big trouble. You can go out and do your job." The fox girl nodded, then turned and left. Originally, the Tauren had released the news that Qin Chuan was going to participate in the 1 vs 1000 challenge. He didn't expect it to cause much of a stir, but Shiyu's appearance was completely out of his expectations. As a result, the challenge had attracted everyone's attention even before it officially began. Thinking of Shiyu, the Tauren felt a little emotional. 3 years have passed. He thought that Shiyu had now become a cultivator in the gold core stage, but he didn't expect that he was still in the Foundation establishment stage. He didn't know if Shiyu, who was once invincible in the Foundation establishment stage, was still invincible after 3 years. Knock, knock, knock. A knock on the door interrupted the Tauren's thoughts. He looked up in the direction of the door and said loudly, "Come in." As soon as his voice fell, the office door was pushed open from the outside. The people who came in were not the arena staff that the Tauren was familiar with, but 2 unfamiliar girls. The Tauren frowned and looked at the 2 girls in front of him and asked, "Who are you?" The girl walking in front didn't answer the Tauren's question. She just threw a golden token on the Tauren's desk, then said to the Tauren, "I just went to take a look at the scene. I don't like the seats outside. It's too noisy. I want to change to a quiet and elegant box." The Tauren looked at the token in front of him, which was engraved with the word Yao. At first, he was stunned, but then he quickly woke up. He quickly stood up and said respectfully to the girl, "Please wait a moment. This little one will arrange it." "Thank you." The girl nodded gently to the Tauren. "By the way, the matter of our arrival is a secret. You'd better not reveal it. This little one knows. This little one will keep his mouth shut." The Tauren nodded his head like he was pounding garlic. Unless he was tired of living, he wouldn't dare to leak any information about this little ancestor. Chapter 495. When the day of the 1000 challenge arrived, the city was overcrowded. Those who couldn't buy tickets were stuck outside the arena, hoping to hear the latest news about Shiyu. Looking around, there were people supporting Shiyu from all directions. On the other hand, the real protagonist, Qin Chuan, was like a homeless man on the side of the road. Lion Duke and Qin Chuan walked together in the crowd. He looked at the crowd around them and looked at the support signs in their hand. He smiled and said to Qin Chuan, "Look, these people are all supporting Shiyu. No one is supporting you." Qin Chuan didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He said, "Isn't this normal? I'm not a local, and they don't know me. Of course, they won't support me." "Then, do you want me to shout for you?" Lion Duke laughed. "My lion's roar can definitely suppress all of these people's voices." "Forget it then." Qin Chuan shook his head and smiled bitterly. "Not many people pay attention to me. If you shout, even fewer people will pay attention to me." The two talked and laughed all the way to the entrance of the arena. There were already staff waiting for them. When they saw Qin Chuan and Lion Duke, they immediately welcomed Qin Chuan and Lion Duke in with a very respectful attitude. "Mr. Qin, Mr. Shi, please come with me." Qin Chuan and Lion Duke were led by the staff to a lounge specially prepared for them. The lounge was very large and luxurious, and it had all the necessary facilities. Qin Chuan didn't stand on ceremony. He directly took a glass of juice and drank it comfortably. He looked at the huge stadium through the transparent window and smiled at Lion Duke. "I can't wait to see the stadium full of people. It must be very spectacular." Lion Baron laughed and said, "It's a pity that the audience is here for Shiyu, not for you." Qin Chuan turned to look at Lion Duke. "I'm about to go on stage. Don't you think it's not a good idea to hurt my confidence at this time?" Leo Viscount did not respond to Qin Chuan. He walked to the window and pointed at the arena outside. He said to Qin Chuan, "If you don't have confidence, you won't be able to walk out of here alive. This is not a fighting ring, but an arena where life and death are determined. If you are not ready, I advise you not to go up there." Qin Chuan was surprised to see Lion Lord's face become so serious. He looked at Lion Lord for a while and said, "I'm ready." In the luxurious private room, Yaorao was sitting cross-legged on the sofa with one hand supporting her chin. She was bored and asked Ma Jiawen, "When will this duel begin?" "Princess, don't worry. Now the audience is entering the stadium. When all the audience enters the stadium, the duel will begin." Ma Jiawen smiled and said to Yaorao, "Qin Chuan's first opponent is the famous Shiyu. Shiyu is known as invincible in Foundation Establishment stage. Moreover, he is recognized by the public. It will be difficult for Qin Chuan to win." Yaorao curled her lips and said, "So what if Shiyu is known as invincible in Foundation Establishment stage? He just hasn't met anyone who is truly invincible. Qin Chuan can even cut off the leg of Zerg's Archon, let alone an insignificant Shiyu." While speaking, Yaorao took out a spiritual value card and handed it over to Ma Jiawen. She said to Ma Jiawen, "Help this queen to bet 1 million on Qin Chuan." Looking at the spiritual value card handed over by Yaorao, Ma Jiawen smiled. "Then what if Qin Chuan loses? Then this queen will look for him to compensate." Yaorao confidently said, "If he can't even defeat this Shiyu, then he really failed to live up to this queen's expectations of him." Looking at the expression on Yaorao's face, Ma Jiawen asked with a smile, "Princess, haven't you also reached the age of choosing son-in-law?" Hearing Ma Jiawen mention the matter of choosing son-in-law, Yaorao cast a sidelong glance at Ma Jiawen and said, "Ma Jiawen, your thoughts are very dangerous." Ma Jiawen deeply looked at Yaorao and said, "Princess, I am not afraid of my thoughts being dangerous, I am afraid of your thoughts being dangerous. This queen's thoughts are very safe." Yaorao turned her head and looked at the arena outside the window, then said word by word, "Only the truly strong is worthy of this queen." In the private room next to Yaorao and Ma Jiawen's private room, a graceful and luxurious beautiful young woman was sitting upright on the sofa. Her white and tender hand was holding a glass of red wine, gently shaking it, looking very comfortable and leisurely. In front of this young woman, there was an ordinary-looking middle-aged man, but his temperament was very special. He was also holding a glass of red wine in his hand, but he was shaking it somewhat clumsily, as if he was not accustomed to it. How many years has it been, Shiyu? We have known each other for nearly 20 years. Looking at the middle-aged man in front of her, a touch of nostalgia flashed through the eyes of this young woman. The middle-aged man called Shiyu slightly paused, then replied, "Madam, to be exact, it should be 18 years, 3 months and 24 days. Hearing this, the young woman chuckled. "You actually remember it very clearly." Shiyu faintly smiled, then said to the young woman, "That year, I was besieged by 4 8th-level refinement chi cultivators, and almost died. Madam saved me, so I wanted to follow Madam and work for her, to repay Madam for saving my life, but Madam said I don't have the qualifications to follow you, and if I want to follow you, then I have to go to the arena and become invincible, so I came here." Mentioning the past, Shiyu also opened his chatterbox, and began to talk non-stop. "When I became invincible in refinement chi stage, I went to look for Madam, but Madam said invincible in refinement chi stage is only refinement chi stage, nothing more. In front of foundation establishment stage, you gave me a foundation establishment liquid to help me advance to foundation establishment stage, and let me go and become invincible in foundation establishment stage. I thought that with my strength, I should be able to become invincible in foundation establishment stage very quickly, but I didn't expect that this time it would take me a whole 10 years. In these 10 years, I have experienced countless defeats, and it was you who hired a professional medical team to treat me, and it was you who has been providing me with cultivation resources for my cultivation. If it wasn't for you, I am afraid I would have been a dead man, and even if I didn't die, I would definitely be a cripple. When I really became an invincible legend in foundation establishment stage, I thought that the next thing I would be invincible in gold core stage, but I didn't expect that my talent was limited. Even with your unlimited supply of core condensation liquid, I still couldn't successfully condense a gold core and advance to gold core stage. I have failed to live up to your expectations. All this time, I haven't been able to sincerely apologize to you, really. I am sorry." Chapter 496. Hearing Shiyu's apology, the young woman couldn't help but show a complicated expression. She looked at Shiyu and said, "In fact, with your talent, it's not impossible for you to reach the gold core stage. It's just that you've been fighting in the arena for more than 10 years and your body has been crippled." Speaking of this matter, the young woman said to Shiyu with some regret, "When you noticed that your foundation was damaged, you should have told me." Shiyu smiled and said, "At that time, I was only one step away from the invincible foundation establishment stage. If I missed the opportunity to challenge because of this, I don't know when I'll get another chance. I've never regretted the past, not in the past, not now, and not in the future. Shiyu, do you know why I want you to fight in this 1 against 1,000 challenge?" Suddenly, the young woman changed the topic and mentioned this challenge. "I don't know." Shiyu shook his head and said frankly, "But I believe that Madam must have a reason for this arrangement." The young woman looked at Shiyu and said, "This time, your opponent is called Qinchuan. I hope you lose to him." Hearing the young woman's words, Shiyu couldn't help but be stunned. He looked at the young woman with puzzled eyes, as if he couldn't understand the young woman's reason. Facing Shiyu's puzzled eyes, the young woman said faintly, "He's the son of an old friend of mine." Shiyu was silent for a moment, then said to the young woman, "I understand, I will lose." "No, you don't understand." The young woman shook her head and said to Shiyu, "I hope you lose to him, not to him, understand?" Shiyu looked at the young woman deeply and said, "Madam, this time I really understand." Boom! When the lights in the arena lit up, the whole scene suddenly boiled up. Everyone was shouting and cheering crazily, waiting for the start of the duel. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Mountain City Arena. The highly anticipated 1 against 1,000 men challenge is about to begin. Are you ready? Under the host's loud shout, the audience responded with even more enthusiastic cheers. Shiyu's name also appeared in the cheers, and gradually, everyone began to shout Shiyu's name. On the other hand, Qin Chuan, who was supposed to be the main character, was awkwardly ignored. Inside the private room, hearing the shouts outside, Yarao couldn't help but lightly raised her eyebrows, then said to Ma Jiawen, "Is Qin Chuan so shameless?" In Jie Mountain, compared to Shiyu, Qin Chuan is almost unknown. It is normal that there is no audience cheering for Qin Chuan. Ma Jiawen was very open-minded about this. Qin Chuan had just entered Jie Mountain, so it would be strange if he had a lot of fans. When Yaorao and Ma Jiawen were chatting, it was finally the time for the challenger to enter the arena. Qin Chuan, who was wearing black sportswear under the illumination of bright lights, slowly walked onto the huge ring in the center of the arena. And on the other side, Shiyu also finally appeared. On the ring, amidst the cheers, Qin Chuan's gaze slowly fell on Shiyu. He had watched many videos of Shiyu's fights before, but this was the first time he had seen Shiyu in person. Compared to the videos, Shiyu in person was more calm and reserved, just like a sheathed sword, not revealing its edge. When Qin Chuan was observing Shiyu, Shiyu was also observing Qin Chuan. Shiyu's first impression of Qin Chuan was immature, and his second impression was that he revealed a bit of maturity and experience. He didn't look like a normal less than 20 years old youngster, rather he looked like a middle-aged man who had already experienced the baptism of wind and frost but still maintained his original heart. A very special feeling, a very special impression. Hearing about you is not as good as meeting you in person. Qin Chuan took the initiative to greet Shiyu. I can see that you are very strong. Qin Chuan was not flattering Shiyu, rather he really felt that Shiyu was very strong. Shiyu, an ordinary foundation establishment peak, gave Qin Chuan a completely different feeling. It was a kind of unique temperament that only a person who had gone through hundreds of battles and wandered on the edge of life and death countless times could possess. Shiyu was called invincible in Foundation establishment realm, and it was not without reason. Facing Qin Chuan's praise, Shiyu didn't show any happiness or dissatisfaction. He was very calm, and didn't even open his mouth to respond to Qin Chuan. Facing Shiyu's silence, Qin Chuan also didn't feel embarrassed. He smiled and very seriously said to Shiyu, "To be honest, I really want to experience your strength. I want to see the difference between me and invincible in Foundation establishment realm. Let me tell you in advance, I am also very strong. I hope you won't be too careless." Shiyu still didn't have any intention to respond to Qin Chuan, but because of Qin Chuan's words, the audience booed. They had seen shameless people before, but they had never seen someone as shameless as Qin Chuan. He actually had the nerve to say that he was very strong in front of Shiyu, who was invincible in Foundation establishment realm. Even Yaorao and Ma Jiawen couldn't stand it anymore. Qin Chuan was really confident. Woo woo woo. A melodious bugle horn sound resounded, and the noisy scene slowly became quiet. Everyone knew that when the bugle horn sound stopped, the duel was about to begin. Qin Chuan, who had already understood the rules of the arena, was ready to fight with all his strength when the bugle horn sound resounded. His gaze was slightly dignified as he looked at Shiyu, who was 100 meters away, and in his mind, he had already formed 3 sets of combat plans. But Shiyu was still the same as before, standing tall and straight, as if he didn't want to take this duel seriously. However, the people who knew Shiyu knew that no matter who his opponent was, Shiyu would always be like this. Buzz. When the last note of the horn ended, Qin Chuan made his move. The first thing he did was to inscribe a thunderbolt charm array to increase his speed. Then, he dashed toward Shiyu like a bolt of lightning. When he was close enough to Shiyu, he unleashed his thunderbolt combat technique. The power of thunder transformed into a thunderous beast that roared and charged toward Shiyu. Whoosh! Just when the thunder beast was about to hit Shiyu, Shiyu's figure suddenly disappeared, and the next moment, He appeared on the left side of Qinchuan without any sign, then he raised his hand and punched out. This simple and straightforward punch directly hit Qinchuan's shoulder. Bang! Huge power erupted in an instant, and the powerful impact instantly made Qinchuan lose his balance, and flew towards the right side. Shiyu stood in the same place, but he didn't have any intention to chase after Qinchuan. He just calmly looked at Qinchuan adjusting his body in the air, and then steadily landed on the ground. And when he saw Qinchuan had stood firmly on the ground, Shiyu made a new move. He flashed, disappeared, reappeared and once again punched out and sent Qinchuan flying. The same scene played out again like a rerun. Chapter 497. After being sent flying by Shiyu's punch for the second time, Qinchuan stabilized his body and stared at Shiyu. However, Shiyu broke away from his gaze in an instant and appeared at his side again, throwing out another punch. Qinchuan instinctively raised his hand to block, but it was too late. This time, Shiyu didn't just attack with brute force, but also with a burst of spiritual power. Rumble! Qinchuan's body flew to the side and landed heavily on the stage. No matter how strong Qinchuan's physical body was, his face turned pale at this moment. His brows were tightly knitted together, and it was obvious that he was in great pain. "You're too weak, much weaker than I imagined." Shiyu looked at Qinchuan with disappointment. With the strength that Qinchuan had shown, even if he went easy on him, Qinchuan might not be his opponent. It seemed that he might have to disappoint his wife. He was invincible in the Foundation establishment stage, and he wasn't someone that Qinchuan could fight against. Facing Shiyu's disappointed expression, Qinchuan's face couldn't help but become a little ugly. Ever since he became a cultivator, he hadn't been looked at like this for a long time. However, although he was unhappy, Qinchuan had to admit that Shiyu was too strong in terms of speed and explosive power. "I admit that I underestimated you," Qinchuan grinned. "If I don't go all out, I won't be your opponent at all." Hearing Qinchuan's words, Shiyu was expressionless and didn't say anything. She had seen too many people like Qinchuan who refused to admit defeat over the years, and was already numb to it. If a person really had strength, they wouldn't show it with their mouth. Seeing Shiyu's expressionless face, Qinchuan knew that Shiyu didn't take his words to heart. However, he soon used practical actions to tell Shiyu that he wasn't all-mouthy king. "Secret skill of fury," Qinchuan shouted, and his eyes instantly turned blood red. His aura became restless and violent, and his whole person was in a state of extreme excitement. Seeing Qinchuan's change on the surface, Shiyu slightly raised her eyebrows. Her figure flickered, and she instantly closed in on Qinchuan. Just as she wanted to send Qinchuan flying with the same move, Qinchuan acted as if he had predicted it and blocked her fist. The moment he blocked Shiyu's fist, Qinchuan grinned. "This time, I won't give you another chance." Lightning Control Array activate. Along with the rolling heavenly lightning, the arena suddenly lit up with a blue light. The violent power of lightning surged and completely sealed the area, turning the arena into Qinchuan's home ground. Facing Qinchuan's counterattack, Shiyu's face didn't show any trace of seriousness. Instead, she smiled. She looked at Qinchuan, and her eyes were slightly fiery. "This time, your performance is decent. You're worthy of me using some of my true skills." Before she could finish her sentence, the aura on Shiyu's body suddenly became extremely strong. Her body seemed to burn, and she released an extremely shocking energy fluctuation. She was like a blazing flame. Feeling the terrifying energy fluctuation from Shiyu's body, Qinchuan's face became serious again. He didn't expect Shiyu to release his complete form so quickly without any intention of testing his strength. In the audience, when they saw Shiyu's long-awaited complete form, they couldn't help but cheer. According to their past experience, once Shiyu released his complete form, no one would be able to last more than a minute under his powerful attacks. Buzz! Shiyu put her palms together, and a blazing red ball of light condensed between her palms. She accurately locked onto Qinchuan, and suddenly a red beam of light shot out, instantly arriving in front of Qinchuan. Lightning Shield. At the critical moment, Qinchuan withdrew the power of the lightning control array and condensed it into a lightning shield in front of him. He wanted to block the red beam of light, but the seemingly sturdy lightning shield was as fragile as a thin sheet of paper in front of the red beam of light. It was penetrated in one hit. Poochie! The red beam of light didn't stop after piercing through the lightning shield. It went straight through Qinchuan's abdomen, and then bombarded the arena, creating a deep pit. The roar was earth-shattering. Ow 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 ow. When they saw Shiyu's attack hit Qinchuan, the audience suddenly burst into crazy shouts. Shiyu's performance didn't disappoint them. The invincible foundation establishment in their hearts had returned. Seeing Qinchuan was injured, Yao Rao immediately stood up, and looking at the waiter with extremely severe expression, she said in heavy voice, "Immediately stop the duel." Hearing this, the waiter was stunned for a moment, then shook his head and said, "I'm sorry, no one is allowed to interfere with the duel in the arena." Yao Rao was furious, but she was stopped by Ma Jiawen. "Princess, Qinchuan still hasn't lost. He still hasn't used dragon transformation technique. He still has a lot of trump cards." Hearing this, Yao Rao opened her mouth wanting to say something, but at this time, a new change occurred in the arena. A burst of earth-shattering dragon roar resounded through the arena. Qinchuan's body suddenly changed into several tens of feet long azure thunder dragon, then roared and flew to the sky above the arena, then opened his mouth and spouted a group of dragon breath toward Shiyu. Seeing Qinchuan had changed into dragon, Shiyu's eyes couldn't help but flashed with a touch of surprise, but his reaction was extremely fast. His figure flashed and dodged the attack of dragon breath. And at this time, Qinchuan swept his dragon tail, and unexpectedly he had predicted the direction of Shiyu's dodging, and hit Shiyu. The powerful impact made Shiyu's body uncontrollably fly to one side, and at the same time, Qinchuan roared and brazenly pounced towards Shiyu. His sharp dragon claws grabbed towards Shiyu from a distance, and unexpectedly it was a kind of space ceiling, making Shiyu unable to dodge. Facing Qinchuan's powerful counterattack, Shiyu angrily roared, and suddenly a group of red-colored light ball appeared in his hand, and directly shot towards Qinchuan. The red-colored light ball hadn't even approached Qinchuan when it exploded in the air, and raging flame covered the sky, separating Qinchuan and Shiyu, making it impossible for Qinchuan to continue sealing Shiyu. Shiyu's counterattack had neutralized Qinchuan's powerful attack, making the tense situation between both of them eased, and the audience who were crazily shouting were also able to relax. No one had thought that the battle which they thought would end very quickly would become somewhat confusing because of Qinchuan's sudden eruption. When the flames slowly dissipated, Shiyu's figure appeared in front of Qinchuan. This time, Qinchuan didn't pounce on Shiyu, but confronted Shiyu in the air, his pair of golden vertical pupils filled with murderous intent. At this time, Qinchuan could no longer fight Shiyu with the mentality of learning from each other. If he didn't fight Shiyu with the mentality of killing him, then the one who would lose the battle, and even his life, would definitely be him. Chapter 498. Roar. Finally, Qinchuan was unable to endure, and took the initiative to break this temporary tranquility, and launched an attack on Shiyu. After roaring, he opened his mouth and continuously spouted dragon breath toward Shiyu, blocking the direction of Shiyu's retreat, then suddenly pounced toward Shiyu with awe-inspiring killing intent. Facing Qinchuan's strong attack, Shiyu didn't retreat, instead advanced, and as if an artillery shell, directly rushed towards Qinchuan. World King Fist. Shiyu roared, then waved his iron fist, and the spiritual power within his body surged out, transforming into a huge fist, and loudly collided with Qinchuan's body. Not only did he block Qinchuan's attack, he even repelled Qinchuan. Qinchuan's figure rapidly retreated, and after rotating in the air, he once again pounced toward Shiyu, but Shiyu still blocked with his fist, not giving Qinchuan any chance to approach him. In the private room, seeing Qinchuan being repelled again and again by Shiyu, and was completely unable to approach Shiyu, Yarao couldn't help but scold Ma Jiawen. I have never seen anyone more stupid than Qinchuan. Don't tell me that after transforming into dragon form, he only knows how to spit dragon breath and fight hand to hand? In the end, is Dragon Clan's fighting method so simple, or is there something wrong with his brain? Hearing Yarao, Ma Jiawen didn't know whether to laugh or cry. After all, Qinchuan is not a real dragon, and also not a monster clan. I think he must have coincidentally obtained the opportunity to transform into dragon form, so not knowing how to use Dragon Clan's fighting method is also a normal matter. Qinchuan was originally a human, although he had the ability to transform into dragon form, but if he could really fight like Dragon God, then could Qinchuan still be considered as a human? Yarao coldly snorted, then said to Ma Jiawen, "This is the result of him not going to Heavenly Monster Mountain as a guest first. If he had gone to Heavenly Monster Mountain first, then he could have obtained Dragon Clan's secret technique inheritance, and wouldn't have been fooled like an idiot. I came here to see him display his invincible might, not to see him being beaten." Having heard what was said, Ma Jiawen looked at Yarao in surprise, then asked, "Dragon Clan's secret technique inheritance? Princess, is this His Majesty's will?" Yarao knew that she had spilled the beans due to her excitement just a moment ago, but since she had already spilled the beans, there was no meaning in hiding it. She still trusted Ma Jiawen very much, so she simply said to Ma Jiawen, "This shouldn't be the idea of Father Emperor, but rather the idea of Heavenly Demon Temple. In the past few years, the Heavenly Demon Temple has been preserving the inheritance of the secret skill of the Dragon Clan. They want to find a member of the Dragon Clan to pass down this secret skill, but they haven't been able to wait for the reappearance of the Dragon Clan. When I saw Qinchuan transform into a dragon in the carefree secret realm, I thought of the inheritance of the secret skill of the Dragon Clan. Maybe Qinchuan can inherit the secret skill of the Dragon Clan." Hearing Yarao, Ma Jiawen couldn't help but somewhat worriedly said, "Dragon Clan's secret technique inheritance is after all an important inheritance of our demon clan. If it is inherited by Qinchuan, who is a human, then wouldn't that be somewhat inappropriate? Of course I have also thought about this matter, but think about it, since the establishment of Heavenly Demon Temple, how many years have passed? Have you ever seen a member of the Dragon Clan?" Ma Jiawen was somewhat speechless, because the Dragon Clan indeed hadn't appeared in the demon world for a very long time. Moreover, so what if Qinchuan is a human? Yarao deeply looked at Ma Jiawen. "Didn't you say just now? It's time for this empress to choose her son-in-law." This guy, Qinchuan, was somewhat anxious. Shiyu's defense and counterattack were too tight, making him unable to find any gap. If this stalemate continued, then it wouldn't be good for him. Qinchuan was anxious, but Shiyu was calm as if he was taking a leisurely stroll. No matter how Qinchuan attacked, Shiyu repelled him with a punch. Not to mention that his defense had no blind spot, he would even seize the opportunity to counterattack, disrupting Qinchuan's attack rhythm. It could be said that Shiyu was quite uncomfortable for Qinchuan. Seeing that Shiyu's attack wasn't successful, Qinchuan angrily roared, then unexpectedly withdrew from his dragon form and returned to his human form. Seeing Qinchuan had returned to his human form, Shiyu lightly raised his eyebrows, but didn't anxiously attack. But when he saw Qinchuan had taken out a talisman pen, he immediately changed his mind and pounced towards Qinchuan. Shiyu was extremely fast, and in the blink of an eye, he arrived in front of Qinchuan. Seeing this, Qinchuan immediately retreated. At the same time, he instantly inscribed a thunder manipulation talisman array. The thunder manipulation talisman array transformed into a thunder beast, roaring angrily as it charged toward Shiyu, trying to stop him from getting closer. Facing the thunder beast, Shiyu raised his hand and smashed the thunder beast into pieces with a punch. However, after the thunder beast was smashed into pieces, it transformed into a thunder dragon, and once again pounced toward Shiyu. Seeing this, Shiyu slightly frowned, then looked at the array diagram in front of Qinchuan. A red ball of light condensed in each of his hands, and then he shot it out. One ball collided with the thunder dragon, and the other ball shot towards the array diagram in front of Qinchuan. Before the result of the collision could be seen, Shiyu's figure flashed continuously, and he quickly approached Qinchuan. Seeing that Qinchuan had inscribed more than half of the talisman array, he immediately shouted in a low voice, "Flame explosion!" As Shiyu roared, a dark red fireball suddenly appeared, and then suddenly exploded. The blazing flames surged and instantly engulfed Qinchuan. Whoosh! Whoosh! The flames were ferocious, turning the entire stage into a sea of fire. Under the burning of the raging flames, the array diagram shattered, the lightning beast disappeared, and even Qinchuan's figure disappeared. It was as if he had been directly turned into ashes by the raging flames. Seeing this, the audience shouted loudly again. Although this battle was thrilling, the winner was still Shiyu, the invincible god of war in the Foundation establishment stage. Compared to the excitement of the audience, Shiyu's expression was much more dignified. He looked at the flames that covered the entire arena and carefully sensed, but he couldn't find any trace of Qinchuan in the flames. The audience would think that Qinchuan had been burned into ashes by the flames, but Shiyu would never think so. According to Qinchuan's previous performance, he would never die so easily. If he is not in the arena, then he must be in the sky. Sizzle! When a violent thunderous roar sounded, Shiyu suddenly raised her head and looked at the sky. She saw Qinchuan with a pair of lightning wings on his back and a long sword in his hand. He swooped down like a god descending to the mortal world. Absolute! With a roar, Qinchuan waved the long sword in his hand. An incomparably bright sword light cut through the sky, penetrated the raging flames, and slashed directly on Shiyu's chest. The moment the powerful sword light touched Shiyu's body, it raged and rushed into Shiyu's 5 viscera and 6 bowels. Then, it came out of Shiyu's body and crashed into the arena, causing an earth-shattering roar. Puff! Shiyu fell to the ground and blood splattered on the spot. Bang! Qinchuan's figure fell heavily on the arena. His sharp eyes looked at Shiyu, who was lying on the ground, and said in a deep voice, "I have won this battle." Chapter 499. With Qinchuan's powerful declaration, the hundreds of thousands of people in the arena looked at Shiyu, who was lying on the ground with a weak aura and had lost his ability to fight. Everyone stared blankly at Qinchuan and Shiyu, who was lying on the ground. Before the battle, no one had thought that Shiyu would lose. The legend of the Invincible Foundation establishment would be shattered. However, it didn't mean that it wouldn't happen. Qinchuan had used his powerful performance to prove to everyone that the Invincible Foundation establishment was only for others. In front of him, it wouldn't work. Boom! After a short moment of silence, the arena burst into cheers. The legend of Shiyu's Invincible Foundation establishment was shattered. They had witnessed the birth of a new Invincible Foundation establishment with their own eyes. The arena, which had been silent for many years, finally had a showdown that the audience could feast their eyes on again. No matter how they looked at it, this was a wonderful battle that would go down in history. Amidst the enthusiastic cheers of the audience, Qinchuan slowly walked up to Shiyu. He looked at Shiyu, who was lying on the ground with a pale face, and said softly, "Did you hear that? The audience that was cheering for you before is now mine." Hearing Qinchuan's words, the corners of Shiyu's mouth curled up slightly. he asked Qin Chuan in a weak voice. Are you showing off to me? Qin Chuan shook his head and replied, There's nothing to show off. I'm just telling you a fact. The audience doesn't like you, but the strong. No one will always be the strong, but the strong will always exist. Shiyu looked at Qin Chuan with a subtle gaze and asked, Are you preaching to me? No, I just want you to recognize the reality. Don't lose yourself because of the cheers and curses of the audience. Qin Chuan smiled slightly. I can see that you care about this very much. Shiyu was silent for a moment. After a while, he said to Qin Chuan faintly, But I've lost everything now. Have you ever thought about taking back everything you've lost? Qin Chuan took a deep look at Shiyu. I know you have some problems with your body, and I have a way to help you solve them. Hearing Qin Chuan's words, Shiyu was slightly stunned. She then looked at Qin Chuan with a playful expression. So, what's your condition? I can help you open the path to the Jindan stage, or even higher realms, but the premise is that you have to be loyal to me. Qin Chuan pointed a finger at Shiyu. 10 years. Shiyu coughed and smiled. I thought it would be a lifetime, but it turned out to be 10 years. 10 years was not a long time for a cultivator, especially a golden core cultivator who had a lifespan of at least 100 years. I gave you 10 years because I think you can only follow me for 10 years. In other words, after 10 years, I will be at a higher level, but after 10 years, you may not be qualified to follow me to a higher level. Do you understand now? It had to be said that Qin Chuan's words completely stunned Shiyu. She had never seen a young man as confident as Qin Chuan. In just 10 years, he wanted to leave behind a golden core cultivator who was once invincible in the foundation establishment stage. Could it be that this guy wanted to jump from the late stage of the foundation establishment stage to the nascent soul stage in 10 years? Even a spaceship might not have such speed. You seem surprised, but I'm just stating a fact. Qin Chuan smiled. It's just like how everyone says that you are invincible in the foundation establishment realm and that I am not your match. But I know very well that once I get serious, you are not my match at all. Well, you won the duel. Whatever you say is right. Shiyu was speechless. The fact was that Qin Chuan won. She could not say that Qin Chuan was pretending. So, are you willing? Qin Chuan stretched out his hand to Shiyu, giving her the right to choose. Shiyu looked at Qin Chuan with a complicated expression and asked, Can I give you an answer later? I need to get a person's permission, although she probably won't stop me. Qin Chuan smiled and retracted his outstretched hand. Then, he said to Shiyu, Then I'm going to enjoy the cheers of the victors. When you think about it, you can naturally find me. Inside the box, Yarao looked at Qin Chuan curiously and asked Ma Jiawen. What did that guy Qin Chuan say to Shiyu? I don't know. Ma Jiawen shook her head. When you see him, you can ask him yourself. I don't want to see him. Yarao curled her lips. He just won a match, so he must be extremely proud. If I go to see him now, he will definitely brag about himself crazily. I don't want to hear those words. Ma Jiawen didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She really didn't understand why Qin Chuan had such an image in the eyes of Yarao. But having said that, this guy is really powerful, isn't he? Yarao's sparkling eyes looked at Qin Chuan, who was walking back and forth in the arena. Then she said to Ma Jiawen, Among the people we know, who can be more outstanding than him? Ma Jiawen carefully thought for a moment. Among the holy sons and holy daughters of various demon clans, it seemed that there was no one who could be compared with Qin Chuan, but, Princess, don't tell me you have forgotten that guy? Ma Jiawen looked at Yarao with subtle expression. That white tiger of Tiger King Division. Pei. Having heard Ma Jiawen, Yarao immediately spat. Then she said to Ma Jiawen, Why did you suddenly mention that guy? You are really disappointing. Seeing Yarao's performance, Ma Jiawen gently smiled. I was just thinking, if our demon clan has any young talent who can compete with Qin Chuan, then it is probably that white tiger. Moreover, if Qin Chuan really went to Tianyao Mountain as a guest, then perhaps that white tiger will come forward. Hearing Ma Jiawen, the complexion of Yaorao suddenly became gloomy, then she coldly said, "If that white tiger dares to do bad things to Qin Chuan, then I will definitely teach him a lesson. Even if Tiger King personally comes forward, he won't be able to stop me." Having heard Yaorao, Ma Jiawen gently shook his head and didn't say anything. If that white tiger really got angry, then Yaorao really might not be his opponent. He won, he actually defeated Shi Yu. The young woman elegantly stood in front of the window, looking at that tall and straight youth's figure. Her eyes flashed with a touch of faint nostalgia. In those days, that person was also so powerful, so invincible, no one was his opponent. "Housekeeper, go and bring Shi Yu back. Arrange the best medical team for him. I don't want Shi Yu's body to deteriorate again." "Yes, I know, I will go and arrange it." The old steward respectfully complied and left with the order. Chapter 500. Let us once again welcome our winner, Qin Chuan, with warm applause and cheers. On the stage, the host of the arena excitedly walked to Qin Chuan's side and handed a golden microphone to Qin Chuan. He asked, "Qin Chuan, you just defeated the invincible Shi Yu and became the new invincible. How do you feel now?" Qin Chuan grinned when he heard this. "If it weren't for the competition rules, I would even want to start the next 1-on-5 challenge. Well, it's not really a challenge because it's not difficult for me." Boom. As soon as Qin Chuan's voice fell, the audience suddenly boiled up. The audience liked to see such a scene. A proud young man saying arrogant words and provoking all opponents. The host didn't expect Qin Chuan to say such words, but after the surprise, he quickly reacted and asked Qin Chuan, "Then how far do you think you can go in this one-on-one challenge?" Qin Chuan smiled and said lightly, "There are a few steps in the challenge, and I can go that far." Wow! The audience boiled up again because of Qin Chuan's arrogant words. Since the arena was built, no one had ever been able to go to the end of the one-on-one challenge. Everyone thought that Qin Chuan couldn't win the final victory, but they liked Qin Chuan's arrogant performance. Shi Yu, who had just been carried away by the staff, couldn't help but laugh when she heard Qin Chuan's words and saw the audience's reaction. If these people knew that Qin Chuan was confident that he could reach the nascent soul stage within 10 years, the audience's cheers would be even louder. When Qin Chuan was being interviewed, Shi Yu was also carried to the arena's medical room. The old butler had already brought the city's top medical team and was waiting there. When they saw Shi Yu being carried in, they immediately carried out a comprehensive examination of her body. The results of the examination were not ideal. The old housekeeper looked at Shi Yu with a complicated expression and said in a low voice, "Your body is too weak. After this treatment, you might really stop at the foundation establishment realm for the rest of your life." If it was said that Shi Yu had a 10% chance of advancing to the Golden Core stage before this battle, then after this battle, Shi Yu's chances of advancing to the Golden Core stage had become 0. Upon hearing the old butler's words, Shi Yu didn't reveal any sad expression because he had already expected this outcome. However, this didn't mean that he would give up on himself and his wonderful future. "Uncle Zhong, I want to see Madam." The old housekeeper, who was called Uncle Zhong, nodded and said to Shi Yu, "You receive treatment first. I will ask Madam to come over." In less than 10 minutes, Uncle Zhong and Madam came to the medical room together. Looking at Shi Yu, who was lying on the bed with various tubes inserted into her body, Uncle Zhong's face couldn't help but reveal a touch of sadness. He whispered to Madam, "Madam, after this battle, Shi Yu's foundation is completely destroyed, and he probably won't live for more than 10 years. Hearing Uncle Zhong's words, Madam's eyes couldn't help but reveal a touch of sadness. She whispered, "I, Zhongqiu, am sorry for him." "Madam." Shiyu looked at the sad expression on Zhong Chuyu's face and smiled slightly. If Madame hadn't saved me that year, I'm afraid that now my bones would have rotted away. How could I have enjoyed the limitless glory of the past 10 years? Zhong Chuyu looked at Shiyu with a complicated expression and asked, "What do you want to say to me?" Shiyu pursed his lips and said, "In the future, I want to temporarily leave Madame and follow Qin Chuan." Hearing Shiyu's words, Zhong Chuyu's eyes couldn't help but flash a touch of surprise. Uncle Zhong was also extremely surprised. They didn't expect Shiyu to plan to follow Qin Chuan. "In fact, I didn't intend to follow him," Shiyu whispered, "but now I'm completely crippled. There's no hope for me to advance to the gold core stage. I can't do anything by staying with Madame. I say no more." Zhong Chuyu interrupted Shiyu's words and smiled slightly. "Do what you want to do. Anything is fine. I respect your decision and support your decision. This has nothing to do with Qin Chuan. It's only about you." Shiyu looked at Zhong Chuyu with touched eyes and said in a choked voice, "Thank you." There was a sea of people outside the arena. Everyone was looking forward to the final result of the duel. Although everyone agreed that the final winner would be Shiyu, they couldn't help but feel a little nervous before the result came out. "He won! He won!" Suddenly there was a burst of cheers in the arena. A horse-faced demon clan rushed out of the arena and roared to the sky. Everyone heard the horse-faced demon clan's roar and quickly asked, "Who won? Who won?" Facing the anxious crowd, the horse-faced demon clan responded loudly, "Qin Chuan won. The Invincible Foundation establishment Shiyu lost. Qin Chuan won." Horse-faced goblin's words were like a sudden clap of thunder in the crowd. Everyone was stunned by this unexpected result. No one would have thought that the final winner would be the unknown Qin Chuan. The legend of the Western language's Invincible Foundation establishment had been shattered. As the news spread farther and farther, the entire mountain city was boiling. Everyone was shocked by the result of the duel. Qin Chuan's name resounded throughout the mountain city. After the interview, Qin Chuan returned to the box. When Lion Duke saw Qin Chuan return, he laughed and pointed at Qin Chuan. "You are the most shameless guy I have ever seen. How could you say something like that?" Qin Chuan grinned and said to Lion Duke, "Anyway, I won. Whatever I say is right. If they want to refute me, they have to at least wait until I lose the duel." "You are right. It even makes a lot of sense." Lion Duke reached out and patted Qin Chuan's shoulder. He said to Qin Chuan, "Although your performance has some shortcomings, there are still many things that are amazing. After we go back, I will help you review this match and find out your shortcomings. After absorbing and digesting this battle experience, you will definitely grow tremendously." "Thank you, big cousin." Qin Chuan laughed. "It was really lucky to have an elder who could point out your shortcomings and mistakes at any time. Let's go and withdraw the money." Lion Duke laughed and pulled Qin Chuan out of the box. When Qin Chuan heard Lion Duke's words, he asked curiously, "Withdraw money? Did you bet? How much did you bet?" Not much. Just 1,000,000 spiritual value points." Lion Duke laughed. "Your odds are very high. This time, after deducting the principal, I made 3,000,000. Qin Chuan couldn't help but slap his thigh in annoyance. How could he miss such a good opportunity to make money? After his performance today, it would be difficult to have such high odds in the future. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.